right, what's up, everybody? We are gonna be tier listing our little butts off again. I'm surprised we it really took a lot of time. It took more time than I thought it would, you know, getting through all the items. I thought we were gonna easily be able to, I was like, is there gonna be enough content for one stream? And we streamed for like over 4 hours and only got 3 tabs done. So yeah. All right, I don't have Caster Labs running. I should probably change that. Let's fire that up. Downloading updates. Oh no. Well, I hope you're all doing well. As you can tell, I've moved into the festive season, going with something fun. I tend to not do a lot of like meta streamer stuff, like costumes or whatever, but this seemed very fun. And originally I was just playing on the hat, but Cirky fits pretty well here, so I think he wanted to join the stream. He wanted to join. Okay, so I think that's working now. Let's see if the chat is successful. It seems like that one is. It'll take YouTube a minute. I'll test that in a minute. Okay, the first thing I want to do though is read the patch notes. Patch just came out, so I want to see 3 p.m. Oh, that must be UTC time, because that's in the future. All right, added Nauvis bus and Nauvis power up menu simulations. Ooh, 2 new menu simulations. Menu simulations. Added camera views to space platform tooltips. Okay. Added radar minimap visualization for roboports and cargo landing pads. Oh, damn. I thought that was what I wanted them to do. That's still not what we want. What I want is when you're blueprinting a radar from a zoomed out perspective in map view, it shows you how far the radar will reach. Right now, it only shows you the visualization of radar range in the mini map, which is not big enough for like legendary radars or modded radars or whatever. So it's a nice improvement, but I don't really like, I'm never placing roboports for their radar range. I like that they have radar range, but I'm not like, ooh, if I move the roboport 1 inch this way, it'll get into a different chunk, because if you place enough roboports, they just give you radar coverage. So that's not, I don't know. I feel like it's nice, but doesn't really change much, I guess is what I'm getting at. The spacecrafting category icon now looks like a cargo pod instead of a rocket silo. Oh, that's new. Okay. That's changing something that's been that way for a long time. Changed the rocket part icon. Oh no, what are we gonna do? Can't change the rocket part icon. Landmines on space platforms now damage the space platform tiles in a radius. Ah, yes, they were talking about this on the Discord. So now you can't just put mines everywhere on your ship. Change rocket fuel from ammonia recipe to require the same amount of solid fuel as the main rocket fuel recipes to prevent a recycling loop. Interesting. That doesn't really change too much for most people. Just kind of, that feels mostly preventing a you know, exploit. Although I am curious how much solid fuel different it costs now, because that could be a pretty big difference. And there's a crap ton of bug fixes. I don't even know, what is that, like 30, 40? It's a lot of bug fixes. Gamepad improvement, modding improvements, and some scripting stuff. Cool. Cool. What was that noise, and why did I get it? Oh, well, actually, no. You know what? I have no idea. Was that my phone? Oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. All right. We'll get to tier listing here in a second. I'm just giving a couple minutes for people to arrive. Let me... Gotta get something plugged in real quick. Sorry. See, there we go. Sorry. I forgot I had a thing I had to do for my family real quick. An email thing, so I gotta send this real quick. Continue. It's a Secret Santa thing. Copy invitation. Send it to my phone. All right. Almost there. Send it to my family. Boom. Feels fitting that I'm, setting up a Secret Santa while wearing this hat. That's just fate, I guess. You guys ever do a Secret Santa? Dave, do you guys do Secret Santa stuff in Germany? Is that a thing? Or is it Boxing Day? Do you not do anything? I have no idea what culture looks like in Germany around Christmas. I mean, obviously there's Christkindl markets. I know that's showing up, right? That's a thing. We have one of those here, actually, which is cool. All right. We also need to decide spending amount-ish. Okay, so tier listing. Tier listing Secret Santa recipients. What's up, Suicidal Carrot? All right, so our next, we did the tabs. We did automation, logistics, and intermediate. So now we have space, planetary order, and then military, and that's it. So I think today's stream will be a little bit shorter than the last one because we just don't have as much stuff to talk about. But the military will have some interesting stuff to it. But all right, let me begin. I think we're ready to go. Don't forget to change the colors. Oh, you mean of like S tier? Yeah. Let me get that going. Which blue did I don't remember which blue I did. Blue, green, yellow, orange, red, and gray. Alright. I did the darker blue. Oh no. That's kind of a purple. Yeah, that is more epic. Hello everyone, Krydax here, and welcome back to Tier Listing Everything in Factorio, the fun series to kind of wrap up my Space Age playthrough, but also I just thought it would be fun to kind of have chats about every single item in Factorio. It's a fun thing so far, and we've already done the first 3 tabs. Now we're into the Space tab, which, new update today, it got a new icon in the most recent Factorio update. Now the Space tab has a cargo hub as the icon instead of the rocket silo with a rocket coming out of it. So that actually just changed today. Very interesting. So yeah, just a quick reminder. Oh, I forgot to pull up my grading criteria. Let's open that real quick. Open recent. Grading criteria. There we go. So this was our grading criteria from the first episode. Someone noted that I hadn't paid too much attention to the quality effects criteria, and I think that's true. I think more or less most things get better with quality in a way that's fairly similar. There are certain things that I probably was not giving enough kudos to quality being amazing. Like, for example, accumulators, have a much bigger bonus to quality, but at the same time, if they didn't, quality would actually feel worse on them, because 30% more power storage wouldn't be that much for the cost that you're putting into an accumulator, because you could just make 2 regular accumulators instead, and they're not that big. So that sort of thing, that still feels pretty balanced. I'm trying to think of what items quality actually feels bigger than it should be. In fact, one of them is on this list, which is the grabbers. Actually getting more grabber arms is insane. And so there are a few things where quality makes a massive difference, but most of them it's kind of not that big of a deal. This one, the thrusters are gonna, they care a lot about quality just because you can only fit so many across the back of your ship, and so to go faster at that point you just need higher quality thrusters. Yes, I know you can make the ship longer and have thrusters in line, but anyway. Yes, and exactly, Dave. Remember, everybody, the list doesn't have to make perfect sense. You're gonna disagree. This is not an objective opinion. This is a subjective opinion, and that's why it's fun. So please argue in the comments, but keep it classy, everybody. So let's start with the chunks themselves. And just also a quick reminder, everything starts at C unless I have a reason to move it. So C is the default. It's not bad, it's not good. I have no comments. Or I have comments that cancel out. So we'll start with the very core of every space platform needing iron. It is the metallic asteroid chunk. These guys are kind of insane how much iron they give you. So I'm gonna call it B just because they're so, you don't even need that many. Like, they give you so much iron. And not even to mention that if you get the asteroid productivity research done a few times, then you're actually getting like a higher and higher percentage of asteroids back. So the cost for each recipe is going down a linear amount, but since it's going down a linear amount, the actual effective ratio of the cost is going up like exponentially. So basically, by the time you're done, you're only spending 1/5 of a chunk per recipe if you're just doing the iron one. And so iron becomes almost free in space. And I actually believe this is why a lot of people are doing legendary stuff in space, because you're going to get an absurd amount of iron, because the iron also gets that productivity bonus. So the amount of iron you get from one chunk that you pulled from space is, I don't even know what the math is. What's the recipe produce? Someone tell me, what's the recipe produce? Let me look it up. Factorio wiki. Metallic asteroid. Yeah, chunks don't get an A because they don't stack. Exactly. It gives you 20 iron. So we're talking 100 iron, but then that's quadrupled because of the productivity bonus. So we're talking 400 iron from one metallic asteroid chunk. And yes, you can also do the advanced version that produces copper, but that one doesn't recycle as many asteroids. So if you were doing a legendary setup, you would want to set it up so that you only run the copper one when you need to, and you run the iron only one the rest of the time, because then you just get basically infinite iron. So that gets a B. The oxide chunks, I'm gonna give them a D because they're just so, you don't have enough of them. So their occurrence is a little too low. And I know that's kind of the point. It's a scarcity thing, so you have to reprocess the other ones to get more water. That's kind of the fun of it. That's the point. But but I'll give him a D because you don't get enough of them. This one is fine. Carbonic, C for carbonic. It kind of does look like a meat chunk, Dave. You're not wrong. I can't unsee that. Thank you. It looks like something you'd see in Planodons almost, as like one of the slaughterhouse recipes. Also, hello, Acero, Hombre. Wow, that's a lot of letters. Glam, you enjoyed the evolution of asteroid processing text. Yeah, I agree. I really liked having the regular asteroid processing and then going to the advanced asteroid processing and then also adding the asteroid recycling into the other asteroid types. Between those three things, it felt like there was a progression of stuff you can do with them. It kind of felt similar to the old oil processing and then advanced oil cracking kind of thing. Promethium, here's my hot take. I think I talked about this, about the Promethium science. My hot take is actually that this should spoil. I think it's really weird that they allowed for two completely different playstyles to get Promethium science. Normally, I am a proponent of player choice, but one of these choices is so much easier than the other that this feels like one of those situations where they maybe should have nerfed the easy one. And if the easy one is the intended solution, that feels kind of less enjoyable to me, or less interesting. So what I'm talking about here, and spoilers for those who haven't gotten to Promethium yet, what we're talking about is the Promethium asteroids only show up once you get past the solar system edge. So you get to the solar system edge, and then you start traveling from the solar system edge to the shattered planet, and that's where these red asteroids start showing up, and you can get Promethium chunks. However, to make Promethium science, you need Promethium chunks, you need uranium, I think. I actually can't even remember the recipe. I think it's bright green rocks, Promethium chunks, and biter eggs. Biter eggs, which spoil, as many of you know. And so the obvious choice, the obvious like gameplay, what's the word? What they're trying to get you to do, kind of what they're going for here, is you grab biter eggs, you pull them up, maybe you make higher quality biter eggs so they spoil slower, you pull them up onto a really fast ship. It's got to be really fast because you got to fly from Nauvis, where the biter eggs are, all the way to the solar system edge really fast, and then you can get into the red asteroid field and start making Promethium science. By the way, you can only make Promethium science in space. I didn't mention that yet. So that feels like the intended experience. So you're racing against the spoiling of your biter eggs. So the faster your ship is, the better. That gives you more time to collect Promethium and craft Promethium science packs while you're traveling into the Promethium field. And then once all your eggs are spoiled, or you can, that's pretty much it. Once all your eggs are spoiled or you've run out of eggs, then you've made as much science as you can. You turn around, you take that home, and then you repeat, right? That feels like a really cool gameplay loop. I love it. I didn't do it, but I love the concept of it, and it's really cool. And yeah, the Promethium chunks, like all the other asteroid chunks, they only stack to 1. So obviously you're not supposed to just put them in a chest and take them home, or put them in your cargo silo, or what is it called? What's the thing on space? It's not a cargo landing pad. Whatever it is, the cargo depot on your space platform. The hub, I guess. The space platform hub. Basically, it's obvious you're not supposed to store them. However, what you can do is just put a bunch of belts on your platform and store thousands and thousands of them by doing belt weaving, even without using multiple colors, by doing undergrounds in like a cross hatch pattern, and then you do a full squiggle in the middle. You can fit a ton of Promethium chunks in a still relatively small space, and then you can just collect a bunch and then take them back over Nauvis, and you can craft your Promethium science directly over Nauvis, where the biter eggs have 0 time to spoil. And that feels really boring to me. Like, that's way less of an interesting gameplay kind of cycle to make the science, and that's obviously the correct choice if you're trying to be more optimal, really in any way. why would you race against biter egg spoilage and the journey for Prometheum science? Like, there's no reason to do that, even though I think it's the coolest way to do it. So I think they goofed, or maybe that's the wrong way to put it, because that makes it feel like there's a right answer. This is just like my opinion, man. But personally, I think it would be cool if you could only craft Prometheum science past the solar system edge, and that way it would force you to make a really fast ship, race against the clock, against the spoilage, and it actually would feel like that cool challenge of, oh, I made it with, 20% of my biter eggs left, or this time I was able to make the ship faster and now I'm making it with 30% of their spoil timer left. Like, it makes you really push for that faster. And right now there's really no incentive to go faster in the game, other than you just want the travel time to be lower between planets. And this would have been the first time where you actually felt like it has to be fast or it won't even happen. And I feel like they kind of lost that opportunity to encourage the player. Glam, I think you can use higher quality eggs in a higher quality Prometheum science recipe, same as everything else. I could be wrong about that because I didn't actually do it. Space platform itself. Prometheum science durability depends on biter egg durability. I don't think so. I think the science just makes it 100% always, unlike agricultural science. I could be completely wrong about that. Someone could correct me, but I'm thinking it makes itself at full durability. So platform definitely goes up to at least a B automatically, just because it looks so cool. The graphics are amazing, and that's half of why it exists. It goes up to an A because of the building on top of it looks so cool. Everything you build on a space platform just looks really cool. And can I bring it up to an S? I really love the space platform and the way that it looks. I think the reason it doesn't get an S is maybe more of a, grading the mechanic rather than the item. Yeah, and they are expensive. That's a good point, Dave. So it's hard to make them an S because they are really expensive. They just look so cool when you're building out the platform. I just love it. I wish we had graphics like that for all building of all buildings on all planets, and the graphics would be different based on the planet, or at least maybe not based on the planet, but it would be different graphics than the space platform, obviously, because it's not a metal floor that you're building on Nauvis. But it would be cool if when a construction bot built a building, it would have some sort of animation similar to what space platforms do, but like a planetary version. Anyway, that being said, my knock on the mechanic, and we mentioned this a little bit, I think, in the last stream, I don't remember why, but just how as platforms get wider, that's what slows them down, and the weight of the platform is kind of irrelevant because there's an overhead of 10,000 tons. You heard me right. Not even 1,000, 10,000. So if you're sitting with your space platform at 400 tons and you're like, ooh, I was able to shave off 50 tons from my 400 ton platform, so now it's only 350 tons. That should help a lot because 350 is a lot less than 400 in terms of a ratio. You're correct about that being math and correct math, and you're correct that theoretically, in a real world environment where your platform weighs 350 tons instead of 400 tons, that would make you go a lot faster. The problem is the calculation in the game is adding a flat 10,000 to that number. So 10,350 versus 10,400, not really different at all. And so the speed difference is going to be basically negligible. And again, that's more about the mechanic than the space platform itself. But it is kind of a bummer that trying to make small platforms is not really that helpful when it comes to speed. And it's much more about your engine to width ratio. You could see a world where they made space platforms cost LDS. Well, Signor Fiance, that is the world that space exploration was. So I'm sure that that conversation happened because despite the fact that they were clearly always making a different game than space exploration, it clearly has some similar concepts to the gameplay. And they literally had Arendelle, the maker of space exploration, on the team helping to design Space Age. So I'm sure the conversation happened around, do we make them cost LDS or not? And I'm very glad they didn't, along with you. Wait, are satellites a thing anymore? Why is this here? Do we still use satellites? What? Do you need to launch one rocket with a satellite in it? Or is this only for non-space age now? This is just 2.0 sans SA. Okay, interesting. I always kind of disliked satellites, to be honest, because they don't do anything. It felt weird to have this, like, victory mechanic. I guess eventually you got space science, but it just felt weird to have satellites that didn't actually reveal the map. So I bring them down to D for flavor fail. The game, the one where when you launch a satellite, it adds an orbital ion cannon. That's clutch. I like that. That was fun. All right, and then let's see. One of these is the hub, and one of these is the landing pad. I think this is the hub. Do I have any comments on the hubs? I mean, most of my UI UX complaints in all of Space Age revolved around the space platform stuff. So I feel like the hub actually is a bigger offender than the landing pad. Most of my complaints had to do with the hub itself and how things work there. So I think UI UX wise, the hub really needs some help still, and I'm hoping 2.1 adds a lot of improvements to that. One of my biggest complaints, just to list one, so I'm not just saying things, but one issue I had is that you can't easily, I know that you can in a really workaround way, but you can't easily create a request for the platform from any planet. You have to pick a planet, and if you're traveling between two planets and you just want to keep the platform supplied with, let's say, ammo, maybe you were importing ammo, you would want to import ammo on both ends so that you're not basically needing to take twice as much each time, and you have to make two separate requests for that. Like, that alone is already a great example of an annoyance, and it gets far worse than that if you have something going between all 5 planets, for example, and you want to request the item from all 5 planets, or maybe you want to request the item from 4 planets and drop the item on another planet. That's a perfect use of the any planet option. And then for those of you that are like, well, actually, the any planet option would be bad because it would make loops where it's dropping items and then requesting them. Well, obviously they would add an exception for that. I feel like it's so interesting that people come up with this, like, yes, a loop would be bad, but there are ways to fix that problem. This is how we iterate on ideas. In game design, you don't come up with a good idea that sounds like something you'd want, and then there's one reason that it maybe would cause an issue, and then you're like, well, I guess we give up. No, you then fix that issue. Like you can iterate on the design, right? So that's my rant about design. Because the main reason I rant about it is because I've seen that exact argument every single time that any planet option is brought up. And I think it's a terrible argument because you can literally just add an exception, right? That's why exceptions exist, right? And it could be explained to the player for those who would say, well, an exception would be confusing because then the players don't understand why it's not dropping the item, or sorry, why it's not requesting the item. And so let's say you did inserters and you were requesting them from these 4 planets and dropping them to Aquilo. Then what it would do is when you're over Aquilo, and by dropping them, I should rephrase that to Aquilo is requesting them. The Aquilo cargo landing pad has a request set for inserters. When your hub, which is set to request inserters from any planet, when your platform gets over Aquilo, that request would just be grayed out. And if you hover over it, it would say inserters are being requested on planet. Done. Now your infinite loop problem is completely fixed. It's explained to the player, and it prevents infinite loops from happening. Obviously, it wouldn't prevent an infinite loop where you yourself programmed inserters to drop from the, like, you drop them into the trash slots, but anyway. Wait, can you even trash things non-manually? I don't think you can, now that I'm thinking about it. No, you can. You can trash items from the hub end. So I guess if you were trying to trash inserters over Aquilo for some reason, that could cause an infinite loop. But that's getting into the weeds of like, okay, yeah, if the player really wants to, they can make an infinite loop, but it's not just going to happen on accident. Anyway, that's why they get a D for that and many other UI UX quirks that I found bothersome. All right, moving on. Let's do the grabbers. I love the grabbers. In fact, I think they get an S. I think the grabbers are the face of Space Age. When you see a platform flying, you know, through Space Age, I mean, I remember when we all saw the FFF of grabbers, it was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, look at the little grabby arms, like grabbing all the chunks. It's so neat. You know, the turrets destroying the asteroids is cool. That's fine. The thrusters and the graphics for the thrusters, great, amazing. But the grabbers grabbing the chunks is just so freaking cool. I mean, it's kind of like having the like the mining drones, you know, where like when you get your Digosaurus in Pyanodons, which is a mining drone, basically, it's so cool because like a little dinosaur goes out and starts mining your ore for you, and that's just so cool. And it's a similar concept. There's something about the autonomy of each arm that makes it feel alive, even though it still is just a machine. It feels robotic and alive rather than just like an assembling machine or a mining drill. And I think it's just really neat. Grabbers are really cool. Also, like I was saying a minute ago, the quality effect of grabbers is also really high because you get more grabber arms. So it doubles. It not only doubles in its ability to grab things, but it also has more range, goes a little faster. It does cost more power. Most things don't cost more power when quality goes up. So that feels like a weird exception. I guess they felt like that was, I mean, is it really too powerful? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like consistency makes more sense than perfect balance, but that's a really subjective line, of course, of like, is it better to just have higher quality things don't take more power as a consistent thing? Because then some things are going to get more power from it in terms of like powerfulness. And grabbers, I guess, are doubling in their effect. So maybe it makes sense that they cost more power. And when I say doubling, I mean from like regular to uncommon. Obviously, they more than double as you keep going up the chain. Thrusters get an A. It's going to be an A or a B. They get an A to start because they look so freaking cool. And I think they did a good job with the complexity level of the fuel and the oxidizer. And you need to feed it to the different inputs. And you can't just put a wall of thrusters and feed into one location. You have to either stagger the thrusters or you have to space them out. Like, you have to do something slightly intriguing. I liked that about the fusion reactors. Similarly, they're thinking in not just a grid, and I like that. The graphics are just incredible. The S tier in terms of the graphics. But the knock on them is the whole fuel efficiency thing. That feels like an entire system that exists in the game that feels like the complexity it adds is not worth the gameplay that it helps. In most cases, it literally does not matter. You're either trying to go as fast as you can because it's just a transport between two planets and you don't need like it's pretty hard to go so fast between the regular planets that you're starting to run out of ammo. On the earlier platforms that you make, that's maybe true, but like once you've got a few upgraded things, you can easily provide plenty of ammo at whatever speed you're going. And so that's not really a big deal. And so the efficiency of the fuel, like when are you actually slowing down more slowly than your fuel production for a reason that has to do with fuel production and not I'm just trying to get hit by less asteroids? Your speed, if you are even attempting to control it, which a lot of times you're not, you're just letting it go full blast. So like we're already down to like 10% of the time when you're actually controlling your speed. even in most of those times, you're only controlling the speed based on ammo supply and turret capability. So what percentage of times are we actually at where you actually want to control the speed based on fuel and oxidizer production? I mean, like, I've never once even had to think about it. So all that to say, I think they added an entire mechanic. When you look at the Factoriopedia, it looks complex. There's 3 different lines on a graph, and you have to be pretty good at reading science graphs to understand what they're even showing. And all of that mechanic ends up doing very little to affect the player. It kind of just exists, and you're going to do what you're going to do regardless of the fuel efficiency in most cases. It's a really weird mechanic, in my opinion, and it feels like the juice was not worth the squeeze. So that's why thrusters get knocked down from S tier. Their graphics are S tier. Them not being able to be flipped, Dave, I do think they should have a warning for that, because it does seem like a bug when you are being able to flip all the other buildings and you can't horizontally flip the thrusters. I also think it would have been reasonable to allow you to flip the thrusters, because then you could connect 2 of them, but not more than 2. I think that would have been fine as well. I don't know. But yeah, just a little warning, like the little error sound that it makes with a little like thrusters cannot be flipped, you know, that appears when you try to do it. That would have been fine. I think that would have helped. They might still add that. Exactly. Oh, you do get a warning? Oh, in that case, I think it's okay. I guess I never tried, so I don't even know what it does. I was just assuming it didn't tell you. Okay, so let's move on to this guy because he's kind of boring. How do I feel about the cargo extensions? Oh, you're right. You could just chain them. Yeah, I'm glad that you can't flip them, actually. Overheating mechanic, by the way, 420 dude, is an interesting idea. I think that's probably best left to mods. That might have been too complex. Space travel and space age is already a pretty dang complex mod, but I don't think adding an overheating mechanic to thrusters would be doable without making it too hard. It's a cool idea though for a mod. I mean, cargo bays are fine. They do what you need them to do. I think 20 slots is fair given that they're 4x4. It feels like a little punishing given a steel chest can have 48 slots and it's only a 1x1, but at the same time, obviously your goal is to, you know, like try to keep the space platform smaller, which again, I feel like was a little bit of a fail on the mechanic of how they did the speed calculation, because making your space platform smaller doesn't really do anything for you. Shaving off space and trying to spaghetti a little bit more so you can make it smaller does not really make it that much faster unless you're making it skinnier. You can actually, in most cases, you could double the weight of your ship and make it twice as tall, shave off just a few tiles from the width, and that would be a faster ship. And that just feels wrong to me. But that's a complaint, not about the hubs or the cargo bay extensions. So these are fine. I give them a C. The fact that they get upgraded with quality is nice. Crushers. Crushers are really cool. I like the shape. It's cool to have a 2x3 processing building for once, rather than everything being 3x3 or 4x4. Are they the only square or the only non-square processing building? I guess recyclers, but those also feel a bit unique in their usage. Is there anything else? Yeah, so all that to say, I like the crushers. Really cool graphics. I have no further comments. The new rocket silos. The new rocket silos. First of all, the new rocket graphics are cool. I really like the way the new rockets look. They feel a bit more like an actual rocket. The old ones were weirdly bulbous and they looked really not aerodynamic, and the new ones look quite a bit more aerodynamic and realistic. They still do not look like things that you'd make in Kerbal Space Program to actually go to space, but they do look a bit closer to that. Anyone ever set filters on their grabbers? Yes, though I resisted the idea for a while. It is the easiest way to keep too much of the wrong chunk from getting on your ship. I think it was Alor that said, and hopefully I'm not quoting the wrong person. I guess I'm not sure it was them that said it. But someone in my chat was like, I think I've seen everybody try to avoid setting filters, and it just turns out that setting filters always ends up being the easiest way to do it. So everyone ends up doing it eventually. All right. So the silo, I didn't finish my thoughts on it. The silo, I like the new rocket graphics. I like the new rocket price. I like cheap rockets. I don't like how little they carry. It feels almost laughably small. You're like, oh, I can't even take a full stack of this thing? I don't know. And some of it is us remembering space exploration, those of us that have played it, and you can carry like 500 items on one rocket. So some of it is that in the back of our heads. And the player apparently weighs a literal ton. Yeah, you're trying to call me fat? I do wish you could do mixed loads in a rocket. Like if you had a variety of requests that all summed up to be less than 1 ton, I wish they could go on the same rocket. I realize that the logic that would be required so bots could do that in a piecemeal way would be really crazy. So I don't know exactly how that would work, but yeah, I think silos are in a good space. I give them a solid C. I don't think I'm going to go up from there because they do have their issues in Space Age in particular. One thing I don't like is you cannot... What can you not do? Actually, wait a second. Someone was telling me that they would automatically send when they're full, but what platform do they get sent to? I think I was talking about this in last stream, and I was saying it's annoying that you can't, because the very first thing I tried to do was manually put into a box all the stuff I wanted to send to my space platform, and then have the inserters loaded in, and then it would launch when it's full, have the inserters load in the next group, it'd launch when it's full. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't possible. They might have patched it into the game, but what platform? If you have 3 platforms above Nauvis and you have automated launches on, where does it go? I don't know the answer to this. But people were saying you can do... People were saying it does launch when it's full automatically now. So I'm a little confused about how that works, actually. Interesting. That being said, it was fine. For the most part, the rocket silos were fine. It does, but you have to have a requesting platform. Well, then that isn't what I... People in chat, and I think this was just 2 days ago in the other stream, they were saying, because I was literally, I think it was this stream, or was it my review video? I'm getting all my thoughts about Space Age, when I said what, mixed up. But I was basically saying, one of the things I didn't like is that you can't just manually insert stuff in and have it automatically launch. And everyone in chat was really happy to jump on my back and be like, well, actually, you can. But it sounds like, no, it doesn't automatically launch if it's not being requested. So that's not what I was talking about. What I was talking about is a push idea. Yeah, that's, okay. I appreciate that clarity, 420, because that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is the idea of pushing items to a space platform, not pulling. And it sounds like it automatically launches if that item is being pulled, but it does not automatically launch if you're wanting to push. And that I would like to be able to do if you want to. Either if there's only one platform above orbit, it would just push to that one. And if there are multiples, you would have a way to select it. Like you could filter, like you could select automatically launch to, and then there'd be a drop-down box, and you could select which platform it would automatically launch to if it's filled up. And it just wouldn't launch to any other platform. And if it's filled and the platform's not above, it wouldn't launch to that. it wouldn't launch at all. It would just wait. Like, that sort of mechanic would have been really nice. And you also can't launch on a signal, which is something I've seen a lot of people request. So those are my complaints about platforms, but at the end of the day, or silos, at the end of the day, they don't matter very much because most of what you're doing is just automated stuff with bots anyway. So the main use cases, I think they covered pretty well. And I gotta say, having multiple silos going at the same time looks so cool. And for that alone, I think it's worth having the really small stack sizes that rockets can carry and really cheap rockets, because you just get to see way more of them launch. And that's really fun. So I give it a C. Had some complaints, but also really cool. And then the cargo hub, I give, well, we'll start at C. I have some negative thoughts and I have some positive thoughts. The negative thought is that you only get one of them. However, that kind of combines with a positive thought, because if you could have any number of them, that would be bad. They used to have that in the game. They wrote an FFF about it. And it basically just felt like requester chests in space, because you could just drop items wherever you wanted them, and that really trivialized the planetary logistics on the planet that you're looking at. You could just drop everything from space exactly where you wanted it. I agree that that's bad. I think it was good to say, hey, you can't do that. We gotta put a limit on that. However, only having one for the entire planet feels a bit restrictive, and it's actually causing issues for mega basers, which is an issue that I myself have not run into and maybe never will. I still feel for them conceptually that even at the end game, when you have these massive planetary platforms you can only drop on one spot for the entire planet's needs, that starts to feel a bit limited. I guess people can always get mods, but at least for regular mega basing, I think Factorio should do a good job of supporting, like, you can go really big without adding any extra tools. So I would love to see a very late game research. It requires Prometheum science levels of research that allows you to have one more, maybe two more. That's it. And it just, that's it. Because only having one, really, it forces you to put so much emphasis on that one little spot on the map. I mean, the number of trains coming in and out once you're dealing with like ultra late game amounts of stuff coming in and out of the planet, it really limits what feels like you can handle. And at some point the bots get laggy because there's too much going on there, and the new bot logic is pretty good at spread out stuff, but I guess it's not really good if you have like tens of thousands of bots going to the same building, and you have to have a million of the cargo extensions that are next to it, but not in a circle next to it, because you need a bunch of charging roboports around it. So it just feels it feels like only having one can be a bit limited in the late game, like the end game. But again, that's not so much a complaint from me personally, but conceptually, I don't like that. You've had science spoiled because the request wasn't large enough. Yeah, in my review, I kind of got into this idea a little bit, but there's a lot of steps now to get an item from point A to point B. Because first you have to request it in the platform that's going to take it somewhere, and then you have to request it in the landing pad that's going to receive it, and that obviously has to be on a platform that has the room, and it has to be on a planet that can get the item to the rocket silos fast enough, and you have to have enough rocket silo or rocket part production. I'm assuming you have all of that, but that's also a prerequisite. And then once all of that is done, you now have to deal with the logistics of transporting the item from the landing pad to where it's going. It's just a lot of steps, and that's fine. That's complexity. We like complexity. That's part of the fun, but it can be a little bit tedious, and I think this is where logistics groups kind of start to come in and stuff like that. So last stream you said you want to have a piece of Factorio shiny uranium in real life. So you're making one? What? You're handling uranium in real life? Is that what you're saying? If so, that's pretty dope. All right, planet rankings. My final thoughts on the space stuff, because I don't want to sound too complainy. I think it's really cool. I really like space platforms. I think they're a really good balance of challenge, but like they're very doable. I think they do a good job of adding some complexity to not just having logistics bots everywhere, or not just having one big train network, right? Like having to do those extra steps to move items, I think is actually good for the length of playthrough that Space Age ends up being. I think there are lots of little quirks and issues that cause some friction for players, and I hope that they can patch some of those out and improve some of them, and mods will improve some of them. Some of it is just my preference, right? And that's where mods are supposed to come in, where like, I really want something to be like this, but not everybody does, and that's why I can go get a mod to fix it. So like, I realize some of what I'm saying is better fixed by a mod than the game itself. So between all of that stuff, I think Space Age is in a really good spot. I do think there are some improvements that need to be made, though. I wouldn't say Space Age is S tier yet. I think it's A tier, not quite S tier. I'm hoping patch 2.1 can get it to S tier, but I'm hesitant to believe that it will. Not that I'm a doubter in their abilities. I just think there are some core level things that they're not going to change at this point that might keep it from getting to S tier. It'll at least get it from like an A to an A plus or something, though, or A minus to A, or you know, whatever. One not letter grade. What do you call that? One sub letter grade. I'll call it higher. You're making things that will look like Factorio game. Epoxy with phosphor in shape of Factorio. Oh, that's cool. I love that. Maria, you'll have to take a picture and send it to us. I want to see the result. All right. Interstitial grade. Yeah, those are words. Let's rank the planets. Now, I want to note, we're about to rank the planetary orders after this, but this is just ranking the planets on their own. So we're not ranking them in terms of the order you go in. That's a separate ranking, so I'm ignoring the order completely right now. Let's start with Nauvis, because it's your homeboy. Nauvis. Man, I have a hair. Or maybe it's a Santa hat fuzz. Where does Nauvis belong? It's good. Is it great? It's certainly not bad. I could never take it below a C for sure. But right now I'm kind of trying to figure out what pulls it up. What pulls it above a C? I think, I mean, the iconicness of it, right? It's the one that we've always had, brings it up a little bit. So vibe checks wise, I think it's got to be at least a B. The new terrain generation is absolutely amazing. I want to commend Arendelle for that. It really feels different. A lot of people, including myself, like when you think about a dev post that says, "Oh, we improved the terrain generation," that always sounds nice, but in most cases, it's not going to be so different that you feel different, if that makes sense. A lot of times it'll just be like, oh, that's nice that the ore isn't annoyingly spawned anymore. Or, oh, that's nice that a forest isn't spawned in the middle of an ocean. You know, like, there are weirdnesses that you notice as a player, and it's nice when devs patch those out. But the change that they made to how the cliffs work and how the pathways work through canyons and forests and water, to where it actually feels like the terrain is providing natural choke points for defense, all of that stuff, absolutely incredible. Like, it feels like a different planet. Even though it looks in many ways the same, the way it plays out is so nice. And I think it was Trupin on my podcast that was actually saying, he was like, I used to hate cliffs, I hate it, I would play with them turned off, or I would always go Vulcanist first so I could get rid of them. And then he said on his playthrough, he was like, I didn't even need cliff explosives on Nauvis. And while I don't know if I could quite go that far, I do agree in the sense that the new cliffs on Nauvis are so much more forgiving, and they're not in the starting area, which is also really nice. So you can build your starting base without having to worry about it. So I do think that could almost pull it up to an A by itself. Maybe, but I don't quite know if it deserves an A, because it's also not that special. It is kind of bland in some ways. And some of that blandness is just because it's what we've had for 8 years. Uranium is on here. All right. I'll leave it there for now, but I'll hear other complaints. Fulgora. I'll go in the order that I went to the planets. This is not me saying this is the order. We're gonna rank the orders in a minute, so you be patient. Fulgora is an A. Like, that's where I'm starting it. Fulgora is so freaking cool. The way that scrap turns into recycling stuff, and then you have to deal with all of that stuff, it feels straight out of a mod pack, but not like it copied any mod pack. And it's now the base game. Like, I love it. It's so complex in a way that I question, like, is this too hard? I was kind of dealing with quality too, though. I think it's a lot easier if you ignore quality and you don't do anything quality related on Fulgora to start with. But yeah, the scrap mechanic is really cool. Fulgora has some weaknesses, though. I can't give it an S in good conscience, because I don't think the lightning mechanic... I talked about this when we talked about lightning collectors, so I won't harp on it for too long, but I don't think it's that interesting. I think from a graphics perspective, from a lore perspective, from a sound perspective, from like a visual spectacle, it's all very good for that. But the actual gameplay of it is kind of boring. You just build lightning collectors all over your base so that you have 100% coverage. Done. That's it. That's all you do. There's no more play to it. There's no nuance to it. There's no like, oh, there are certain areas that get hit by more lightning than other areas, but they're hard to get to, and I have to spend resources to get power from there back to here. What if you had to, oh my god, I just thought of such a cool idea. Oh, I've had an epiphany. Someone go make a mod. Dave is gonna go make this mod, and then I'm not gonna install it, and he's gonna be mad at me. But basically, what you do is you have it kind of like right now, there's different types of islands, right? You have it so there are lightning islands, and you wouldn't call them that, but basically there are areas in the game that get hit by a lot of lightning. And you have to go there with your lightning collectors, and you have a special kind of collector that's different than just the protection against lightning strikes, but it's actually like a collector for power. So you have two kinds of buildings now. And those collectors, you put empty batteries in them. And you have to then take those batteries back to your main base on trains to discharge them. And so basically you're taking the charged batteries from these lightning islands and you're transporting them to your main base to give you power, and you have to have this kind of constant supply of charged batteries, and you take the discharged batteries back. Some of those types of mechanics are already in some mod packs, but something like that feels so much cooler than what's in the game right now. I will again note, these are just like my opinions, man, and it's very possible that that would be too complex for the average player in Factorio. But that being said, that's my cool idea. Take it or leave it. Mod makers can steal it. You know, I'll just come for you when you're rich. That being said, Fulgora was really cool. The oil ocean idea... I could kind of take it or leave it. Having infinite heavy oil was cool, but without having infinite water, you end up not feeling like it's infinite anyway, because you need the ice to do anything with it. So it was kind of... It felt weirdly similar to Nauvis in a lot of ways, because now it's water that's limited instead of oil. So the whole process of oil change stuff still felt similarly limited. It was cool to be able to make infinite lube, though, without any work. That was kind of neat. Yeah, I liked Fulgora. Also, the unlocks. We have to think about the unlocks from each planet. The mech armor is just dope, right? So having mech armor is so cool. What else did we unlock? That's where quality 3 modules come in. And what else? Tesla turrets kind of don't matter. Oh yeah, the recyclers. Oh my god. Yeah, of course. yeah, if you want to make Gambletrons, you gotta go to Fulgora. Though there was a part of me that kind of felt like I didn't need them yet. I kind of feel like you need Vulcanus to really take advantage of huge amounts of recycling loops, because you need all those resources, just the iron and copper resources. So to some level, it feels like Fulgora plus Vulcanus is necessary for good quality stuff. But yeah. Okay, on to Vulcanus then. Vulcanus is weird. From like a was it fun perspective, I kind of give it an A, but from like a design perspective, it almost feels more like a D. Like, it was boring design-wise to me. And when I say design-wise, I mean the gameplay design, not the visual and audio design. Like, that was really cool. I loved the visuals of it. I loved the audio stuff. I loved the demolishers and the way they looked. And it felt like I was on cheat codes, right? And I used that exact phrase, I think, in my last video. Like, Vulcanus feels like cheat codes. It's so crazy. You literally just pop an offshore pump in lava, and you grab like 5 calcite from a calcite patch, and boom, infinite everything. And it just was like, wait, that's it? That's all I have to do? And now I can make infinite steel and copper wire. Like, I don't even have to work hard to make the copper wire out of the copper plates. I can just make the copper wire infinitely. I can make the iron gears infinitely. I can make the steel infinitely. I can make pipes infinitely. It just was like, oh my God, it's just so easy. And as soon as you've started any calcite mining, it kind of feels like you're already at infinite everything. And for me, I already had the EMPs as well, the electromagnetic plants, and so it was really even easier to make tons of circuits out of all those metals. So Vulcanus felt very cheat code to me. I do think, though, that it's good that one of the planets feels a little on the easier end, and one of the planets feels a little on the harder end. Gleba spoilers. Like, I think that's okay. Homogeneity is very good in games. You don't want it to all feel exactly the same. I actually think a lot of games try to balance things too evenly to the point where it's all homogeneous and it all just feels the same. So there's a balancing act that developers have to do to make things a variety of easy and hard that feels really satisfying, rather than just it's always the same exact feeling the whole time. But I think it gets a B. I think at the end of the day, it's still really cool. I think the foundries look cool. I like the tungsten stuff. The demolishers are neat. Having overpowered stuff is strong. Like, it's an S in terms of just power level. So it would feel weird to bring it down to a C just because I thought it was a little boring. So I think I give it a B. It's an A or an S in terms of power level alone. But design-wise, it felt really easy. I mean, it was already crazy enough to have the items super easy and free, but then on top of that, they made power easy and free, right? As soon as you have a little bit of sulfuric acid and like 3 ounces of calcite, boom, infinite 500-degree steam, and you don't even have to work for it. It's even easier than nuclear on Nauvis, which is already really easy. You literally just need the turbines and you're done. So that felt a little kind of like a bad joke. Tsunami warning, Glem. I saw that earlier. I hope you'll be okay. It appears that you'll live. The quake was far enough away. Yikes. I do not live somewhere close enough to an ocean where I would have to worry about tsunami warnings. So that's a scary thing that I'm thankful I don't have to deal with. Now, I know some people would just dump Gleba here and move on with their life, and I know some other people would dump Gleba here. Well, I don't know if anyone would dump Gleba there, but I know plenty of people would dump Gleba here. It is easily the most polarizing planet, which is ironic, because you'd think Fulgora would be polarizing, given all the electricity. But with Gleba, there are some really cool things going for it, and if you don't like some of those things, it's going to be an F for you, or a D. And if you like those things, it's going to be a B or an A. At least with most of the conversation around Gleba that I've seen, both before the game came out and we saw a lot of people complaining about it, and then we saw we literally saw before our very eyes, basically. The dev team responded to a lot of the complaints. They shifted a lot of the mechanics. I was actually privy to some of the more intricate details on what actually was changed, and people responding to those changes as they were happening, because I was in the beta Discord. And I will say, it's a lot better. Like, it seems like about 9 out of 10 things they did to change Gleba changed it for the better in everybody's eyes. Both the people who still don't like Gleba and the people who now do like Gleba, or always have because they didn't play the beta. Pretty much everybody agreed on a lot of those changes being good. There were a few that some people didn't love or whatever, but for the most part, the changes were great. And all that to say, I think the spoilage mechanic is really neat. I think it felt like, and I said this in my review of Factorio, all of the planets felt like a mini game. They felt like a puzzle of their own. And it felt like I got to play almost a miniature mod. It's like a miniature overhaul mod for those, you know, first 5 hours, maybe 10 hours that you're on a planet where you're figuring things out, you're getting the base set up, and then you finally have the science pack and rockets being launched. That felt like its own little mod. Each planet kind of felt like a little overhaul mod. And the Gleba overhaul mod, you know, of having spoilage and needing to loop things, and your nutrients are turning into spoilage so that you have to make sure you have enough nutrients. That was all really cool. I loved that. And I really enjoyed the, just the idea that, like, you can't just buffer things or let them sit on belts forever. You can't do back pressure. Oh, that's a term that shows up quite a bit in the Factorio subreddit and Discords and stuff. But back pressure is where your production is generally greater than or equal to your consumption. And so if your production is greater than or equal to your consumption, on average, you're gonna have full belts, right? And that's back pressure. And the reason that is how a lot of us tend to play Factorio is that means when we add a new production line, we're already going to have a belt full of those ingredients, and we just get to use them, and now we have the new stuff flowing. And sometimes that then destroys your back pressure because it's consuming too much, but then you go and create more production and you work your way backwards. And that way, on average, you're kind of only making what you need, weirdly enough, even though your production's more than what you need. I don't know if this is making any sense, but it's an easier method than like planning out your items per second from start to finish, like in Hellmod or something. So that being said, Gleba tells you you're not allowed to do back pressure. If you do back pressure, everything's just going to spoil on the belt, and you're going to have to deal with lots of extra spoilage. So it's just this really cool idea of like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to do my agriculture. I'm going to constantly collect these fruits, and that's what I get. I have a certain rate that's coming into my factory of these jelly nuts and Yumako plants. And that, between those two numbers, that kind of limits what I can do. And I need to work within those numbers. And if I want to increase those numbers, I need to increase my farming. And then so it was really neat. I loved it. I loved almost everything about it. I think the only thing I slightly complained about is I felt like nutrients maybe spoiled a little too fast, and that was a little frustrating at the beginning when a lot of stuff is just in your pockets and you're trying to play around with stuff, and you're like, I can't even play around with it for more than a couple minutes before my nutrient supply that I was feeding into these biochambers has now disappeared, and I need to make a bunch more, and I don't have bioflux yet because I haven't quite gotten there in the research tree, so I have to make these crappy recipes, and I need more Yumako mash, but then I need Yumako fruits, and I haven't gotten the agricultural towers set up. So it did feel like the beginning was a little bit hard, but once you started getting a few things flowing, it was really cool. Yeah. The enemies seemed to be the main complaint that most people have on Gleba. A lot of people that are mad at Gleba and they're like, F minus. Those tend to be people who had their bases steamrolled by pentapods. And for that, I do feel bad for them. I showed up to Gleba with mech armor that had a lot of lasers on it, and I just flew around and killed everything anywhere near my pollution cloud. So I don't think I saw a single pentapod attack my base for the first like 10 or 20 hours of Gleba existence. So it wasn't that big of a deal for me. I realize that's not everybody's experience though, and if the pentapods are knocking down your door from minute 1, that is definitely a little bit annoying. But that'll come into our planet orderings here in a minute. I don't think, at the end of the day, I think that it's okay that Gleba has enemies. I think it's okay that they attack you. I think expansion being on by default is okay. I could go either way on that argument, so I think it's fine. So yeah, I give Gleba an A actually. I really, really, really liked Gleba. My complaints revolve more around trying to do Gleba stuff off Gleba. This comes back to my original point. It felt like a puzzle. It felt like a mini game. I loved the Gleba puzzle and mini game. I did not love needing to play that mini game everywhere I use a biochamber. I did not love needing to deal with taking a spoilable item all the way to Nauvis to feed the biters, to take another spoilable item all the way back to Gleba to make the overgrowth soil. Like that, I liked the spoilage mechanic as its own little contained thing. I didn't like spoilage just being all over my quite literal solar system. That was where I didn't like it quite as much. The main thing there as well is I didn't like that I needed a spoilable item for the prod module 3s, when the speed 3, efficiency 3, and quality 3, they all have almost exactly the same recipe, and you could use the same blueprint for all 4 of them, except the prod ones have a spoilable resource, which just changes everything. And it just felt like, did we really need to do it that way? Couldn't we have used carbon fiber instead of biter eggs? You know, like it feels a little, you know, back to the idea of consistency. That's a place where the dev team broke consistency on purpose, and that's going to have pros and cons. I think for my personal taste, that was a little bit more of a con than a pro, to need biter eggs for those, but at the same time, it's fine. Okay, so yeah, all that to say, I really liked Gleba. It was, I think, my favorite mini game of all 5 of them. As far as just the mini game on the planet itself and the, you know, the 5 to 8 hours that it took, amazing. Aquilo was sweet. It was my favorite visually. I loved the icy look. I've always liked ice planets. You know, Hoth was always one of my faves. Obviously, it can look boring if it was just flat white everything, but they found a way to make it look visually spectacular because you're on this island and there's the ice, but there's also the ice with snow on it, and then there's the little islands that have the fluorine on them. So it was pretty neat. Heat pipe mechanic was boring. Interesting. I kind of disagree. I think it was, well, yes, but no. I'm looking for a different word than boring. I think what I said in my review is that the heat pipe mechanic, I really liked it. I liked that it forced you to build a different shape for everything. You couldn't use any of your other blueprints. You had to think differently. What I didn't like is that once you kind of figured out how to do it, it didn't provide a continuing challenge of any way. It was kind of like, well, I just have to have these lines of heat pipes with their little arms going to touch the building or the belts or the inserters, or, you know, there's more than one way to do it, but I wouldn't say there's 100 ways to do it. There are limited, just because of inserters aren't that long and buildings don't have that many tiles around them and that sort of thing. If you're wanting to make a build that can be more than 1 or 2 buildings, they do start to feel pretty similar and samey. And so I think it was a cool mechanic, but once you're doing it, it doesn't provide that much more of a challenge. It doesn't provide that much more of an interestingness to it. And so once you're kind of spreading heat around the base, it's like, okay, I'll build this thing. Oh, bring the heat pipe over, boom, 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 done. It wasn't like that tricky. It wasn't like Gleba where every single item that you add into a loop makes it more complex. So I did think Aquila was easier than Gleba for sure. Yeah, Azrael, that is also an issue. I would agree. It doesn't tell you the heat consumption. You have to look in the game files to find that out if you're curious. and even then it's not clearly communicated. But I think the argument there is you can just feed a bunch of solid fuel into heating towers and just make sure the temperature isn't going down. But I agree that doesn't necessarily fix the problem of not communicating that to the player. I think it's 10 kilowatts per pipe, not 1. At least the chart that I saw online was 300 for the undergrounds and 150 or 100 for the same amount of normal pipes. That being said, it also felt easy to keep everything heated. So I almost, again, this is back to the difficulty question of like, what I think would be best for difficulty might be something that's too hard for the average player, because I play stuff like Planetons and I'm busted in the head. And for me, I kind of was hoping at some point I would need to actually make more heat. You know, it's like, oh my God, everything froze because I added a few too many buildings and a few too many belts and pipes and inserters, and now everything got too cold because I couldn't keep the pipes hot. I only had a 2x2 nuclear reactor and then like 5 heating towers. That's all I had, and it was easily enough. And the nuclear doesn't even run anymore. Like once I got all the heating towers set up and the solid fuel, which is basically free from ammonia, once I got all that set up, it was kind of like, oh, boom, like everything is now hot forever. And I have an easy, 400 megawatts of nuclear power that can just turn on to add more heat. So it felt a little too easy to keep everything hot, but that, again, that's more of a spectrum of opinion where like some people found Aquilo really hard and it almost made them want to quit. And if Aquilo was harder than it already is, they probably would have quit. So I think dev team wise, I think they probably did a good job with the difficulty of Aquilo. You don't want the last planet to be so much harder that it feels like, because at that point you're running into exhaustion. It's a long game, right? And you've already done 4 planets, one of which is kind of your main planet. So you've put in a lot of time and energy to this game already, and you're kind of getting to Aquilo like ready to wrap it up. And I think for that reason it's good that they didn't make it super hard. Yeah, jump starting Gleba and Aquilo can be an issue. I found my issue was that I couldn't figure out what the problem was. And I guess the same would be true on Aquilo. If it were to freeze over, okay, that sucks. You need more heat, but that's the only thing you know. And at least on Aquilo, I keep rotating this. At least on Aquilo, you know that more heat is the issue. On Gleba, my Gleba base broke, and I still, to this day, have no idea what went wrong. I had a couple, like as I analyzed the base and we looked into the production graph and the power graph, because that's the only history that you have available. As I looked into that, the power went off long after production of nutrients turned off. So somewhere, somehow, I ran out of bioflux to make nutrients. Like, that's about all I know. But when I looked at the base as it was running, it was hard to diagnose what was going wrong, and the only way you could catch it is if you watched it right as it broke, and that was hard to go back and see. Gleba's broken, everything is spoilage, but I don't really know what happened. It's kind of like when you in the movies, a character walks into an old house and like everything, or another planet, or some alien research lab, or some whatever, and there's skeletons everywhere and cobwebs, and they're shining flashlights around, and they find some log book to try to figure out what happens, and the music gets real tense. That's kind of how it felt like going back to Gleba. Like, how do we even figure out, what happened here? There's a lot of skeletons, a lot of people died, but what actually caused this? I have no idea. That being said, I still really liked Gleba. All right, this is my tier list. This is space, Krydax, space tab. All right, and then, wow, how did I talk for an hour and 10 minutes about what is like 20 icons? I guess we talked a lot about the space mechanics as well. So now we're gonna do the planetary order. I know these don't look amazing, but they're what we got. They're what I whipped up on short notice, so y'all can deal. Let me get the colors going. I don't know why you cannot, at least as far as I could tell, you cannot set up the colors as part of the thing. You have to set them up once you open it, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird. All right, so the way that I did the planets was this one. So I'll rank this first because it's the only one that I actually have experience with. I give it an A, maybe even an S. I actually think I ended up going with one of the best options, and I'm using best very lightly there because best implies that you have optimized for your constraints perfectly, right? Or for whatever constraints we're discussing. The problem is everybody has different things they're optimizing for. If you're optimizing for difficulty, you want a hard experience, Gleba first might just be for you, right? And so best is very subjective based on what you're optimizing for. But anyway, this was the route I went, and let me talk about why I really liked it. First of all, Fulgora doesn't really require anything from Vulcanus or Gleba. The big miners would be nice for scrap, but at the same time, the regular miners did fine for the amount of scrap I needed. And belt stacking would have been nice, but I didn't really need that either. And apart from that, you definitely don't need foundries. I mean, foundries give you some more holmium for free, but like that's not, at the end of the day, that's not that crazy of a deal. And like, you're gonna, I don't know. For the foundries alone, I don't think that required a whole nother planet. And then, I mean, what else even is there? Fulgora is pretty self-sufficient. And so the reason it goes first in this order is nice because then you can just do what you need to do. You're not really going to miss most of the stuff from these other planets. And then now you have electromagnetic plants, and having electromagnetic plants for the other two planets is a massive boost. Even just taking them back to Nauvis, I don't think you need to rebuild Nauvis between each planet, but doing a quick, like, oh, I'll at least replace my blue circuit build in 10 minutes with electromagnetic plants instead of assemblers, that alone gives you so many free blue circuits. It makes launching rockets from Nauvis cheaper. You know, it's just like that. It's a huge upgrade, almost as big as foundries. I do think foundries are a little bit of a bigger upgrade than electromagnetic plants, but at the same time, electromagnetic plants are an easier upgrade because they only need power. There's no calcite to worry about. So yeah, all that being said, I did feel like Fulgora first was really nice. And then you have mech armor, which is just amazing. It makes it laughably easy to survive the enemies on the other two planets. So as far as like survival and combat, mech armor makes it really easy. You can't kill a demolisher with your mech armor alone, but it certainly helps you survive a demolisher if you get into a tussle with one. So yeah, this was my order. And I mean, this one's almost obvious. Like, Gleba last is such an easy best answer. Again, depends on what you're optimizing for, but for a lot of different things that most players seem to care about or value, Gleba last makes a lot of sense. Because Gleba is the most complex. It also has... You get a huge benefit from having the other planets' bonuses on Gleba, but you don't need the Gleba bonuses for the other two planets very much. The only biggest thing, or the biggest thing that Gleba does that I do think you could argue for needing is belt stacking. Being able to get belt stacking early is huge. Like, having Spidertrons is fine, having Prod 3 modules is fine, but even then, Prod 3 modules are almost like a fourth thing. They're not really a Gleba thing, because it's really like you have to attach Gleba to Nauvis, and then you do more stuff on Nauvis, and then you can make Prod 3 modules really only on Nauvis, unless you then want to send those. So really, like, Prod 3 modules almost feel like their own side quest that you can do after Gleba. They're not just something you unlock like the other modules. That being said, belt stacking is really strong, and that would be the argument for going to Gleba first. Would be, I want belt stacking. I want to build my Fulgora and Vulcanus bases with belt stacking from the beginning. And that's really nice. Oh, you know what, Azrael? That's a good point. I should mention that. One of the other big things that Gleba unlocks is the advanced asteroid processing. And so being able to make calcite from space happens, and that's really nice. The only reason I think that's kind of sadly a moot point is that calcite is needed in such small quantities that it's just really, really laughably easy to ship the calcite you need from Vulcanus. It's like, I almost wish that it's stacked in smaller amounts or something so that grabbing it from space felt more compelling rather than just shipping it. Because being able to ship up 500 per rocket, each of those sets of 500 is going to last you like potentially multiple hours, you know, on a planet. So it felt unnecessary. It felt powerful, but it's like, I don't need calcite from space. It's about having foundry prod on it. Well, you can do that without calcite from space, though. You can do that with calcite from Vulcanus, too. Oh, rails on Fulgora, that very much is I think what's the word? Red herring. I think, well, I guess it depends. No, it depends. I got lucky. That's the best way to say it. I got a good spawn where I had zero need for deep oil ocean rails to have a good like scrap availability. I don't know the rules of the terrain generation on Fulgora. I am under the impression that with exploration, most people are going to be able to find a pretty good, like, I'll build on this island and I have these tiny islands that I can get to without crossing the deep oil ocean. I think pretty much everybody has that situation, but I could be wrong. And if you don't have that situation, then yes, Vulcanus before Fulgora helps with that. That being said, I just really liked this order because Fulgora felt like it didn't need anybody else's help, and it gives you the powerful results of the electromagnetic plant and your mech armor. And then Vulcanus already is easy enough, but it's even easier with the mech armor and the electromagnetic plants, because having the electromagnetic plants means that the absurd amount of copper and iron you're making now is also making an absurd amount of circuits, and it's easy to power those electromagnetic plants because power is super easy on Vulcanus. So it felt like the biggest drawback of the electromagnetic plants didn't even matter. So it just felt like, boom, like I can make everything in infinite amounts on Vulcanus really easily now. And so that's where my module production started booming. And then at that point, now you have the two powerful ways to make kind of your base resources, and you can use both of those on Gleba. So you need way less iron and copper on Gleba. Ah, Cirky! Cirky, come back! Where'd you go, buddy? So you needed way less of iron and copper on Gleba because of having the EMPs and the foundries, and that felt useful because then you don't need as much bioflux, and bioflux is limited based on your farming area, right? And so Gleba has these hard constraints based on terrain generation on how much stuff you can make. You can't just put speed modules in your miners like you can on other planets. So I actually think Gleba last makes a lot of sense for that reason too, because you're going to have better modules, you're going to have better production, you're going to have better beacons, better ways to control your production that will help your Gleba base do what it needs to do. So Gleba last, I think I'm going to put that as a B just because I know this is one that I think this is probably the most popular that I've seen. Vulcanus first just because it's easy for all the reasons we talked about. Fulgora because, again, it provides a lot of strong bonuses. It doesn't really need the Gleba bonuses, and Gleba needs the Fulgora more than the Fulgora needs the Gleba. So that all being said, but I don't know. Should I put it at A as well? I probably should. These are probably pretty similar. Because having foundries on Fulgora is nice. It gets you more holmium. don't know. No, I think Fulgora first is better. There's my hot take. At me in the comments. Now, let's rank the Gleba firsts. So Gleba first is crazy. I actually felt like Gleba was so much harder than the other planets that I think the devs, and I know this is strong language, excuse the strong language, we're all having fun here. I think the devs made a mistake by making all 3 planets look equally inviting to a new player. For people who are enfranchised, aka they're watching videos on YouTube, they're engaging with content, they're looking at the subreddit, they're talking to people on Discord, whatever it is, they're enfranchised to Factorio in some way. Those are the people who are going to know that Gleba's the hardest, and they're the ones who are going to know Gleba first might not be the best idea. If I'm doing Gleba first, I'm doing it for the memes or the challenge or whatever. That's all fine. But I'm talking about the player who just buys the game and has fun with it, which I know it's hard to believe because we're all enfranchised. Literally, if you're watching me, you're enfranchised, and so you cannot imagine what it's like to not be enfranchised. Maybe you can because maybe there are other games where you're not enfranchised. But that's how most people play Factorio. And by most, I mean more than 50%. More than 50% of people who play Factorio have never touched the subreddit. They've never watched a YouTube video. They just play the damn game, and they never make a peep about it. And those are the people who I fear for, because there's nothing telling them that going to Gleba might not be a good idea first, for reasons, you know, that are kind of hard to just warn about. So I think it could be a little better if in the tech tree, Gleba either costs more packs or it's offset slightly, so it's like tier 1.5. You know, if we're looking at like all those planets are tier 1 and Aquilo is tier 2 and Nauvis is tier 0 or whatever, it feels like Gleba like needs to be warned, or players need to be warned about Gleba in some way, because it's a very different experience, and I think it's completely healthy that the game has a planet that is the hard planet and a planet that's the easy planet, Gleba and Vulcanus. I think that's healthy. I think that's fine. I just think it needs to communicate that to the players in some fashion somehow. I'm not saying it should put a big shining warning light on the planet and say, warning, don't go to this planet first. Like, it shouldn't tell the player what to do, but some amount of information I think would have been helpful. So I think that's actually more of a like design question on how the game can give the player some amount of guidance, but not too much. And that's a really hard question to answer properly. Yeah, Gleba locked behind purple and yellow science. That is a perfect example of a solution to what I'm talking about. There are probably pros and cons to that particular solution, but that's an example of one that I think would have helped players realize, oh, Gleba needs a bit more oomph for me to go there. It still is totally doable. It just is going to, you know, require a bit more finesse. Anyway, that being said, which of the... I'm going to put both of these at D, because I just think Gleba first is kind of a challenge and a meme. And it really... I guess if you're obsessed with stacked belts, that's the only reason I can think to do this. Because after you only go to one planet, without having foundries or electromagnetic plants, you're not making productivity module 3s yet. I mean, I guess you can if you have a Nauvis mega base, but if you're doing a Nauvis mega base, the planet order is kind of irrelevant because you've mega based already anyway. I guess if you... Well, now that I think about it, if you've Nauvis mega based, stacked belts might be the thing you care about the most. Because you already have made production of, you know, 600 plates per second or whatever, and you don't need foundries. But if you've mega based to the point where you don't need foundries, I guess to some level that's just... I don't think that's a very common scenario, I guess, but I'm Kibitz. I looked at his base and it kind of looks like that. he's doing crazy stuff before he's even gone to space. So he could be a contender for Gleba first, you know, because I think belt stacking is inherently more powerful the bigger your base is. And so if you've mega based before leaving Nauvis, Gleba first could be a little bit of a stronger argument. Which of these is better though? Yeah, green belts are good, but yeah, compared to stacking, they're nothing. Especially because stacking, I was disappointed by this. The planets didn't rely on each other's packs enough. I wanted stacking 4, where I got 4 items per stack. That should be locked behind Aquilo. I was expecting when I go to Gleba, I just get a stack size of 2. And then I need to go to the other planets, the other middle planets, and then I can get to my stack size of 3. And then after Aquilo, I can get to my stack size of 4. But you can get all the way to stack size of 4 from Gleba alone, which just felt really weird to me. Am I remembering that right, or am I wrong? I'm only 80% confident of what I just said. Anyway, I do think Gleba first is D tier. I think these are about the same, to be honest. If you're doing Gleba first, you can do whatever you want for the other 2 planets. I think in general, at that point, you probably want Foundries more than you want EMPs. So I'll put Vulcanus first slightly in front. That'll be D+, this will be D. And now we look at the other 2 where Gleba's in the middle. Gleba in the middle is an interesting choice, mainly because you're leaving one of the other planets for last. So the question is kind of like, which planet is best left for last if you're doing Gleba middle? Or the other way to think about it is, which thing do you need the most to tackle Gleba? That's probably the best way to think about this. So do you want Foundries and Green Belts and Speed 3 modules? Or do you want mech armor and Tesla turrets? I mean, that if you're into the military thing, if you've turned up the enemy settings, you definitely want Fulgora first, because the Tesla turrets do a really good job of dealing with Gleba enemies. So that, military-wise, is the obvious choice. But EMPs versus Foundries on Gleba, that feels pretty equivalent. EMPs makes it sound like I'm talking about a weapon, but we're talking about the electromagnetic plant when I say EMP. The electromagnetic plant versus Foundry, those feel pretty equivalent. Mech armor on Gleba is so nice, being able to fly around and have better weaponry and shielding. Quality modules are kind of irrelevant on Gleba. You only do quality on Gleba if you really know what you're doing, or you're mega basing or something. Most people on Gleba are just going to go with kind of ignore quality, except for the final products like missile turrets or whatever. So the recycling and quality is kind of irrelevant. So in that sense, Speed 3 modules are better. Artillery, kind of useful to keep the pentapods out of your pollution cloud. I actually think artillery is probably a more effective solution to pentapods than Tesla turrets, because artillery keeps them from attacking you in the first place, apart from that first time you take out the base, whereas Tesla turrets just defend you from increasing amounts of attacks as the enemy expands into you. So honestly, these feel pretty similar. I feel like I can see good arguments for both. I think Fulgora gets a slight edge because of the mech armor. That feels really helpful on Gleba. Being able to go really fast, you can explore more to find a good spot to put your base, where you have the green and the pink soil nearby. Then again, I mean, you can explore with power armor too. You just, oh my goodness, I keep knocking Cirky onto the floor. Sorry, dude. I need to tape him in here or something. Is this my final? Final summary? I think it might be. And what's funny is it feels like the more important thing is where Gleba goes, you know? And that says something, right? Like, if you're ordering your planets based on where Gleba goes and the other 2 are kind of interchangeable, I feel like that says something. Again, I think what it says mostly is that Gleba is the most difficult. Which again, I actually want to reiterate, I think that's a good thing for the health of the game. I like that the planets are heterogeneous in terms of their difficulty. I think that's good. I do also think that it could have been helpful to give the player a small amount of natural guidance towards the fact that Gleba is the hardest, and it does pose a significantly different challenge than the other two planets. I think it's a big enough difficulty spike to go to Gleba that it's worth communicating to the player. I don't think Fulgora is a big enough spike over Vulcanus that it's worth communicating, or it needs to be communicated, but I do think Gleba is. And again, that is very opinion based, and it's hard to know for sure what you need to tell the player and what not to, but that's my take. Yeah, and of course, Dave, there could be a reason for any order. And again, what are you optimizing for, right? There's no wrong way to play the game. If you're like, I want to have the hardest, most asinine experience, and I want to hate myself and all the choices I've made, then yeah, go to Gleba first. Like, why not? No, I kid. There are other reasons than that to go to Gleba first as well. Like belt stacking. I love belt stacking. There could be a playthrough sometime in the future where I go to Gleba first because I just want to get to belt stacking ASAP. I do think a sad fact is missile turrets are useless in the middle planet regions, right? Missile turrets aren't useful until you go to Aquilo, because you don't need them to kill biters, and you might use them on Gleba, but you don't. But Gleba is where you get them, so that isn't a reason to go to Gleba. It's like, well, I go to Gleba to get the missile turrets to defend myself on Gleba. That's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. That doesn't tell you when you should go to Gleba. If missile turrets were really useful for dealing with some threat on Fulgora, right? Like, that could be interesting. I'm not saying Fulgora necessarily should have threats. That's just an example of what could have made Gleba earlier a bigger reason. But there's no military reason to go to Gleba first, really. And I mean, Spidertrons are like your automated armies, but I don't know. Do you need Spidertrons on Vulcanus to kill Demolishers? There's like a million ways to kill Demolishers, so it's not like you need Spidertrons. Any planet start on Gleba? I'm sure I'll do that at some point, Dave. Maybe I won't. I'd like to think I would, but like, there's so many different ways to play this game. And I love mod packs, so how many more times am I gonna play Vanilla Space Age? Probably a few, but I don't know if I'll play it, you know, that many times. But yeah, this is the Krydax Planet Order. And this has been tier listing the Space Tab and the Planet Order. And I will keep streaming, so if you're here live, stick around. We're going to do the Military Tab. From those of you from future YouTube recording land, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments. You tell me your favorite Planet Order and why. I love to hear it all. I read all the comments. So thank you for leaving them. As always, stay classy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, I'm gonna take a quick restroom and stretch break, so you guys do the same. Take care of your body. Yes, you with the, you look like a ferret right now with how curved and bent your spine is, because you're slouching like this with your feet up on here, and you're typing like this, and you're killing your spine. Go stand up, do some stretches, and we'll be back in a minute. That's literally how I sit and type. Yeah, I knew it. I knew it, because you're all like me. It's what I do too. Posture. I someday will get a standing desk. I had one at my old job, and I actually really liked it. I wouldn't do literally the entire day standing, but even just having a period of a few hours where you're doing something other than sitting in the same way feels really nice. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. What are we doing here? Account, military tab, yeah. Wait, why is this one the correct colors? Weird. I mean, I know I must have said it that way some other time, but... Have I tried a kneeling chair? I haven't. Could be worth looking into. I feel old thinking about it. I'm like, ugh, that feels like it would hurt. But maybe it would be good. I don't know. Certainly is cheaper than buying a whole new desk, so it might be worth trying just on that nature alone. I think what's kind of funny is I'm gonna rank all these when half of them I haven't used. Like, ever. No, I think I've used all of them. With a couple exceptions, I've used all of them at least once in some fashion. But I never touched the personal railgun. I never touched the personal Tesla. And I never... I think I've used everything else in some form or fashion. I don't think I did a battery Mark III. Anyway. Hello everyone, Krydax here, and welcome back to our Factorio Space Age Rank Everything, Tier List Everything Challenge. Is it a challenge? I guess it's a challenge. Yeah, go challenge your other favorite YouTubers to do this. I'd love to see some other streamers and YouTubers takes, or make your own, even if you're not a YouTuber, because you don't have to be a streamer to tier list everything. I'd love to see some other people's takes on these. You can access them. They're accessible in the link in the About section. It should link to my profile on Tier Maker, which has the 5 different tabs separately, the planet order, and then I made one that just has literally everything in one big tier list if you just want to do it all at once. So that being said, we have our grading criteria here. We kind of moved away from these a bit in the last video because it was more about space stuff, which felt a lot more about the mechanics of space stuff, and then also the planet orders, and planets are not items, so a lot of these didn't apply. But we're back to kind of applying a lot of these for our military tab. Now, I will start with saying the military aspect of Factorio has never been my favorite, in the sense that it's not why I play the game. I have played most of my 2000 Factorio hours with no enemies turned on. However, Space Age has added a lot of interesting reasons to use military objects that didn't exist before, and I think a larger ratio of my hours will be with some form of enemies turned on. Also, asteroids are a form of enemies that I would always want to be on, even if enemies on planets were off. So I do like that. I think overall that's really cool that we have a reason to use turrets that isn't just defending our base. So I like that. That being said, let's dive in. I don't know if we want to kind of sort some things out for, like, should we do equipment separately? I've kind of gone back and forth between random orders and kind of trying to do similar things at the same time. Let's do this thing. I don't even know what this is. This is the discharge remote, I think, which triggers this thing, which is the discharge defense. This has got to be a straight up F. Look, everything in this tab has a use, so yes, you're gonna at me in the comments and you're gonna be like, well, Krydax, discharge defense is actually the strongest thing in the game, and if you just tried it, you'd know. No, it's whatever. This could be deleted from the game, and I think 2 people would cry. Okay, like this is probably the most useless. Yes, I realize it has a use, but I'm calling it one of the most useless items in the game. So discharge defense is pretty pointless. I do realize that numbers-wise, they buffed a lot of the crappy stuff. So now if you end up making it, it's not wasted your time. But why do you need to make it? Like, and that's, I guess I'll get into it now. We got to get into it sometime. That's my complaint about the Factorio military stuff. We have way more hammers than we have nails. You know, like we have way more solutions than we have problems. We have way more types of weaponry than we have needs for different types of weaponry. So most of these things are good at killing biters, but you only need one of them because all biters die to the same things. Biters tend to not really have a lot of need for multiple solutions. Usually you need to combine two things to be really effective at killing biters, but even just laser turrets by themselves, and I'm gonna pick that right now, and it's going straight to S tier, because it's all you need, baby. Laser turrets all the way. The biters are getting a little close to doing some damage. Well, you just add more laser turrets. And yes, they need power, but they don't need so much that it's impossible to power them. A little bit of nuclear power, and you're golden. A few accumulators to make sure a bunch can fire at the same time. I do think, I'm not going to harp on it the whole video, but this idea of like, it's too easy to deal with biters, so we don't need all these different weapons. That is kind of my take on the military system. And I think Space Age added even more awesome new stuff and didn't add very many new challenges. In some ways, it kind of felt like pentapods are kind of just like biters again, though they do have different resistances, so you kind of need a few different things. But it felt like they added missile turrets to exist only to fight the one thing that missile turrets are good against. I guess missile turrets are good against two things, asteroids and pentapods. But like the railgun kind of only exists to deal with the asteroids, which feels really weird, because I think it'd be really cool if there were enemies that attacked somewhere that you needed a railgun. But at the same time, I said all this in my review video, so I apologize if you've watched both, because I said kind of the same things there. I actually think it was like Giga Chad, Brilliant Brain, you know, 500 and 420 IQ for Wooba to make it so that the main military challenge in Space Age is asteroids. The reason I think that's amazing is because it makes it so that the thing that you are risking when you fight against this enemy, and I know asteroids don't quite feel like enemies, but I'm going to call them an enemy. The thing that you're risking is just a vehicle. It's kind of an expensive vehicle. You'd put a lot of heart and soul into making these space platforms, but at the same time, it's not your base. It's not your factory that's being risked. It's not like you are under attack. It's kind of like you're traveling through dangerous waters and you have to defend that thing that's traveling. But that's not risking your factory on Nauvis. That's not risking your base on Vulcanus, right? Like, and I really like that. I've been talking about one of the main issues with Factorio combat is the risk. I've likened it to even programming. A lot of people feel like Factorio is kind of like programming, both in terms of how it feels when you fix something, the reward that you get, the number of solutions that there are, the kind of, it almost feels like you're creating functions and calling those functions when you make blueprints. So there's a lot of ways that Factorio feels like programming. And then imagine that if you had a bug in your program, it would delete random lines of code. That isn't fun, and that's how it feels to me, the normal biter defense thing. It's like, wait, if I make a mistake defending against biters, I lose part of my base. That's not a fun threat. I want it to feel important that I defend against them, but I don't want to lose the factory that I've designed. That's not the thing I want to be risking. I don't mind if I lost all of my iron plates. I'm fine with those just taking time to regenerate, but I don't want to lose my factory buildings that are making those iron plates. So that's sort of my take, and it's always been my take. I've been saying it for years now. And I actually feel like Wooba kind of did what I had always wanted, which is the thing that you're putting at risk is your space platform. It's not your base, it's not your factory. And now you kind of feel almost worry-free. Like, yeah, you want your space platform to live, but if it doesn't, you could make a new one because you already made that one. So all that to say, I really like it. I really like the new asteroid defense stuff. So yeah. Ooh, belt immunity, A tier, S tier even. As soon as I can make it, I make it. It is kind of sad that there's no easy hotkey for it. If there is, let me know that I'm wrong. But it would be nice to be able to turn it off real quick to be on your people mover and then turn it back on when you get to the end of your people mover, because people mover belts are nice, especially in the earlier game or in mod packs where, like Pyanodons, where you need to walk 5,000 meters just to get past one of your production lines. People movers get even more important, and you might want to use them, but not all the time. Anyway, I digress. Exoskeletons, also S, maybe one of my favorite things. It's so fun to be able to just stack movement speed. I'm a big sucker for movement speed in all video games. I don't know about you guys, but like in World of Warcraft, I always loved, and I haven't played for many years, so don't try to use the lingo with me here. But you know, back when I played in Burning Crusade, I always loved like playing the classes that got better movement speed. I think the Druid, or no, not Druid. Why can't I think of the name of it? The Alchemist thing person. It's not Alchemist though. The Shaman. Thank you. I'm thanking myself for remembering. The Shaman, because you could get like wolf form earlier than other classes would get like their mounts or whatever, and it's like, the movement speed bonus. So nice. So I loved my Shaman way back in the day. Anyway, I love move speed, so I love exoskeletons. So great. I guess we're ranking equipment right now, so let's kind of keep ranking equipment. Shields. So shields are interesting. I think shields are A tier just because you kind of need them. Like, a lot of the equipment feels pretty optional, but if you're doing anything with military, by the way, we're ranking the military tab here. I'm assuming you're playing with biters on. I'm assuming default settings, biters on. We can think a little bit about how Death World might change something, or higher enemy settings might, but like, obviously, if you have enemies turned off, half of this tab is an F, so that's a boring thing to rank. We're not gonna rank it like that. So that being said, when enemies are on and you're actually having to fight them, shields do matter a lot. You die pretty quick without them. So I'm giving shields an A, just because of their necessity. It feels so good once you finally have power armor and you stick some shields in there and some batteries and some solar panels. So that's a great feeling. I think tier 2 shields are kind of pointless with quality. I think this is one of those examples where quality or having more tiers of shields, I don't think we needed both. It just feels superfluous. Obviously, they're better than the tier 1. So on a power level sense, they're a subgrade above the tier 1 shields. But in a sense of like, do we need them in the game? I give them a D. They're kind of boring. Also, the slight interestingness is that they're less efficient. Like, they hold more hit point units, but they require more energy for each hit point unit they regenerate than the blue ones. I think that's cool design. The problem is quality blows it up. Quality says, oh, well, you should just have higher quality of these then, because that's better in every way. And then with higher quality of these, you're getting into the hit point levels where nothing could kill you no matter what ever. So there's really no point to need the tier 2s. So I do think quality kind of killed the need to have 2 of these. So there's that. Let's see, what's next? None of this is equipment, right? None of that's equipment. Beep, 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 beep. Night vision. Okay, I'm gonna put it in F for now. It might be a D or a C because they changed it, and I haven't really gotten to play much with the new version. The way that it was when Space Age released up until they changed it a week ago, I'm giving that version of night vision an F. It was so yellow, I couldn't stand it. If you guys were watching my Space Age playthrough, you'll know I hated it so much. And I tried. I left it on for like a good 5 or 10 hours just to kind of give myself, you know, I was trying not to just have the gut reaction, but give it some time. And I never stopped hating it. I felt relieved when the morning would come and the night vision would turn off. I felt this actual, like, in my body, I felt better when the morning came and the night vision turned off. It wasn't just this like, oh, that's nice. It was like, oh my God, thank God. It was a true relief for my human self. So the older the yellow version was an F. I'm not sure about the new version. They said they made it slightly less orange, which I thought was interesting because I always felt like it was yellow more than orange. But I'm interested to try out the new one. It might be slightly better. The old version was an A or an S. I didn't love that it decolored things, but it at least did what you needed it to do where things didn't get as dark. I really liked the Bob's approach. I think it's Bob's. 3 tiers of night vision, and the best one was perfect. It would give you vision everywhere as if it was day always, with 0 color shifting or decoloring. And I feel like quality would be really cool if it did the same thing, where legendary night vision would just give you perfect vision of everything all the time. I think that would be a good way to reward the player for getting a legendary night vision, and it would be a good way to remove some of the annoyances of night vision. Unfortunately, that's not what we have, so it stays in F tier for now until I can try out the new one. It'll go at best up to C probably, though. One thing I do need to note that I haven't mentioned half the time because I don't think I knew this at first. The night vision changes the color based on what planet you're on. I think that's why they wanted to do it that way. The old one would just decolor everything, but I think the new one, they're like, ooh, each planet could have a different like tint that it applies to everything. Personally, I think that just makes everything worse, not better. But I realize that's subjective. Some people loved it. I saw a post on Reddit where someone was like, oh my God, can we just talk about how great the new night vision is? And I'm like, what planet are you from? But you know, that's just preference, right? And Dave, I think I'm saying that correctly, but I also am not 1,000,000% sure about what I'm saying. So someone can correct me about that if I'm wrong. But I think different planets have a different tint that are applied. Oh, shields and tanks also are amazing. I agree with that, Maria. Okay, so let's look at the RoboPorts. I think quality has done to RoboPorts the same thing what it did to shields. I think having 2 tiers of RoboPorts is cool, but you kind of don't need it if you have quality of RoboPorts. I don't know. I know that they upgrade slightly different things. I think there's one aspect of like what tier 2 upgrades over tier 1 that quality doesn't affect, but those are all design decisions that could have changed, right? Like you could have made it so that it did affect all the same things, and then you just remove this item and you make the quality buffs a little bigger and you're good to go. Like it's true that you can handle way more bots with the better one, 2.5 times as many bots. And but at the same time, I made it through the whole game with these guys. So I just don't, like if you're doing big building projects with Spidertrons or your own self outside of a construction bot zone for the main base, then the tier 2s are pretty nice. I think I see the need for a tier 2 RoboPort more than the shield, so I'm not gonna separate them like that. I do think it's still a bit on the win. I'll use the term win more. For those who play Magic the Gathering, they'll know the term. It probably is used in other games too, but it's basically like you kind of only use it in a situation where you kind of don't need it, right? Like if you could just probably have a higher quality armor with more of these, which is going to accomplish most of the same things. So it's nice when you can make it, but it's certainly from a sense of like, are you rushing for it? Do you really need it? Can you delay it without much of a downside? Yes, you can delay it without much of a downside. No, you don't really need it. No, you're not really rushing for it. Whereas that's true for this. So I'll give an A to the regular personal RoboPort because it's such a big win when you can finally have your own bots. That's amazing. But the upgrade from this to this, while it is a fairly big upgrade, it's just not that necessary for most cases. It's nice, but it's not that big of a deal. Okay, let's move on. Let's keep doing equipment. PLD. PLD is awesome. It's almost too good. Even after the nerf, they cut it into a third. A third, not even a half. And it still is too good. Partially because quality armor gives us way too many slots. But that's an armor thing. But yeah, PLD S tier. I mean, having a weapon that requires 0 ammo, it requires 0 upkeep, and it just kills stuff around you with 0 aiming required. It's too good. I actually think PLD is bad for the game because it gives you less reasons to use the rest of this stuff. I do agree, Dave, they are weaker, but the problem is having a rare power armor or something just gives you so much room, even for the weaker ones, that you can still just kind of melt everything. So they're too good. They're S+. And I think they should be like weaker or use even more power or something. I think they're still too good. Which is funny because they got cut into a third. Not only that, they got cut into a third, and the biters' nests got a huge boost to their health. And pentapods even resist lasers. And they're still too good. It's crazy. Like, it's true that Gleba was my last planet. I didn't have... All I had was a rare mech armor. So it was rare, which is nice, but it wasn't an epic. And I didn't have high quality PLD. And I certainly didn't have like rare power generation or rare battery. Like, I think I had a few uncommon things, but my power generation was just a couple of these normal quality, nothing crazy. I had some batteries, maybe an uncommon tier 2 battery or something, or 5, and a lot of exoskeletons, but they weren't like the rare exoskeletons to save on space so that I could have more lasers. And I just melted the pentapods. And even the stompers, they took a few seconds, like I had to kite around them for a minute and then they'd die. It really, the PLD is too good. That's my hot take. At the same time though, if it was weaker, that could be annoying because then it would force you to use these other things, which are harder to use. So it's kind of like one of those, like, I really like that there is a nice easy solution to just stuff your armor with PLD and you win, but it also might be bad for the what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it might cause the player to not have a chance to try out some of the other solutions to weaponry. All right, these guys, it feels so good when you finally get your fission reactor. I'm gonna put the fusion at C. It's fine as an upgrade. It is a fun reference, but you know, this was previously this icon. So we've kind of always had this in the game. It's just now the icon for the fusion reactor is this one, which is what used to be this uranium-based fission reactor. Anyway, that being said, it kind of felt similar to the tier 2 Roboport, where it's like, yeah, if I really needed like absurd amounts of power, I could upgrade to that, but I kind of didn't, because 2 of these in my backpack was fine, and I even had some uncommon ones of these at some point, and that felt like plenty when you have batteries and stuff. If you're using like a huge amounts of robots on Aquilo, then you need this a bit more, but it didn't really feel that necessary. So it's a C. It's fine. It's an upgrade. You know, I'm not knocking it. Remember, C is default. C is fine. So fine is my summary for fusion reactors. Continuing on with the batteries, did we need 3 tiers of batteries and quality? Again, this just feels... I'm putting F for tier 3. I don't mind having 2 tiers, but 3 tiers felt excessive when quality is also impacting everything. It's too much, in my opinion. I'm giving both of those C tier. They do what you need them to do. They're kind of necessary. Maybe I'll do B tier for the first one because you do rush it, because you need batteries. But it also isn't that special. It just does what you need it to do. It's kind of necessary. Most of the other things in the power armor feel like a choice, but the power storage feels necessary to run your shields and PLDs. If you're not doing any combat, it feels like you can get away with just 1 or 2 batteries, but even Roboports tend to use a lot of charge at one time and not need charge for a long time. So batteries do feel like a really good choice, potentially instead of power generation. Like, there's worlds where rather than having 2 fission reactors, you would have 1 fission reactor and a square of batteries that takes up the same size, and that would actually be more efficient. There are worlds where that's the case. So I think batteries are pretty cool. Tier 2 batteries are a fine upgrade. Tier 3 batteries feel unnecessary. And they're not even that big of an upgrade over the Tier 2 batteries, comparatively. I think it went 50, 200, and 250 or 300. But like we quadrupled our battery storage going to a double. And then we didn't even... Let me look it up so I don't say wrong things real quick. Space Age, battery... Personal battery Mark III is 250. Personal battery Mark II is 100. Oh, okay, that's a little better than I thought. And the personal battery is 20. Oh, okay. So I was actually wrong about two things, but they canceled out. Two wrongs made a right. So it's 5xing your power to go from here to here, and then it's 2.5xing your power to go from here to here. But at that point, these are already providing so much power, especially if they're higher quality, that it felt a bit unnecessary comparatively. Like, yeah, you're just at the point where you're kind of already golden once you have these, particularly if you have more of them in rarer armor, or you have rarer ones of these. So again, it's like, okay, fine, it's an upgrade. I shouldn't give it an F, though. I'll give it a D. It felt about the same as the shield, I guess. That's fair. Solar. Solar's fine. I think quality helps it feel not quite as useless, because you can make rarer ones of these, and then they're a bit more useful. But the problem is you can also increase the rarity of your other generation equivalently. So it feels like if you're already doing higher quality of these, why not just do higher quality of these? Maybe you're strapped for the resources of blue circuits, but it feels weird to go ham on making like rare solar panels when you could just make an uncommon one of these to do more work still. I guess what I would actually hope for, and maybe this exists, there are plenty of things in the game I still don't know. But what I'm about to say, which I don't think is true, is I would hope that quality would impact the solar panels more than the fission reactor. And to me, that would be an interesting way to make it viable. But that is not the case. It's just the 30% boost. 30%, 30%, 30%, and then 60% for the legendary. So, in my opinion, it'd be more interesting if the solar, like, doubled. And then, you know, so it would go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. And then it's like, wow, if you're willing to make legendary personal solar panels, they're actually on par with a legendary fission reactor. But then there's the argument that that doesn't make any sense. And is that even, I don't know. There's all sorts of ideas out there. All right, what else do we got? Is that it for the non-armor things? Ooh, tool belts. Tool belts are interesting. On the one hand, I love inventory space. So like S. They're maybe the most necessary of all the things, because even if you have biters turned off, you still want them. But the problem is it's weird that there's now 3 ways, maybe more, to increase your inventory space. And it feels kind of like disjointed. It's like, okay, there's literally researches that increase your inventory space. Maybe there's, I'm gonna say 4 ways. There's researches, there's the armor sets, there's increasing the quality of the armor sets, now there's tool belts, and I guess 5, there's increasing the quality of the tool belts. So it's like, but quality, I guess, in some ways is one thing, where like increasing the quality of your armor or tool belts is kind of like one way to upgrade inventory. So there's 4, I would argue, 4 mechanically distinct ways to increase your inventory space. On the one hand, I'm glad we have ways to increase our inventory space. And then on the other hand, I'm not sure we need that many ways. It feels like these kind of replace the researches. So I would have preferred either a few more researches or remove the researches entirely, and now we can make these. It also feels weird that we can equip infinity of them, because then it's like kind of a joke. Like, do I need 500 inventory spaces? that feels janky more than it feels reason. Like, I was imagining we could only equip one of these, and then you'd want to increase the quality of it, and that would add on to your armor, and you'd increase the quality of that. And that feels kind of like you can have one armor and you can have one tool belt, and that's, you want to upgrade those, but instead you can just equip 10 of them and have 100 slots. I don't know. That felt a bit weird to me. It's fine. I liked having the inventory space, but I don't know if I found it to be interesting. Yeah, senior fiance, like, we do tend to like choices, but is it always good that we can do whatever we want? You know, because that gets back to the cheat code question. If you can just type in, give me 10 million iron as a choice, that is a choice. Players like choices, but are they all good choices always? I don't know. You do want 500 slots if you're mega basing with quality and no extensive RoboPort network. Yes, there are situations where you want 500 inventory. But even then, you could already get pretty good with a legendary mech armor with one legendary of these. That's already kind of a ton of inventory slots. I could even see a world where they allow you to equip only one belt with the lower armors, and then 2 belts, and then maybe 3 belts with that. I don't know. Because, yeah, I do think quality bloats out your inventory, but I think that's more of a knock on quality than it is a plea for help for adding more inventory slots. All right, moving on, because we got to finish this sometime today. I think we're ready to move to the power armors, because the rest of this stuff is weaponry. Yeah. Also, D-Doom, I missed this earlier, sorry. You said don't forget that not everyone uses quality, so having a few tiers might not be that bad for some users. Unfortunately, quality is a core mechanic of Space Age, and everything has to be ranked with it being assumed. And that's one of the reasons I actually have some qualms about, or some questions about whether quality is good for the health of Factorio. Everybody plays with it. Literally everybody? No, there are probably thousands out there who are playing with quality off, and there are millions who are playing with quality on. Like, it is the default experience for Space Age, and basically everyone is using it. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say about it. I realize there are some people who hate it enough to intentionally avoid it, and that's fine. I'm glad that that is an option. The problem is the core experience is tailored towards quality, and I don't think you should try to make a game that tailors to balance itself well with quality on and quality off. Like, it needs to be balanced for quality on, or it needs to be balanced for quality off. You can't do both, and you shouldn't try to do both. And I think that's actually a mistake. Like, I think a great example of this, it feels like a good analogy to me anyway, is when games that have multiplayer try to balance their damage numbers around multiplayer and single player, as in PvE, player versus environment. You should not balance for both at the same time. If a skill is overpowered in multiplayer, it needs a different balancing set of numbers than if it's too good against monsters, right? And I hate playing a game where I'm a single player versus environment, and then all these balance changes come in that make the single player experience worse because something was too strong in multiplayer. And it's like, well, I don't care if it's too strong in multiplayer. I don't play multiplayer. Why are those balancing changes affecting my experience when I'm playing a different game? And I think the exact same argument applies to quality versus not. Like, yeah, having 2 tiers of shield is necessary if quality's turned off, but quality is a core part of Space Age. You can't even play. Oh, for some reason I thought you could, Maria. You can't? I thought you could play Space Age without quality. Are you for sure on that? Why did I think that you could play Space Age without quality? Oh, wow. Okay, in that case, my argument stands even further. Since quality is required on Space Age, there's even less reason to have the idea of tiers overlapping with quality. I think is showing up too much in military stuff. Like, I think that gets into a whole different conversation. But that being said, is it core D-Doom? Yes, it sounds like it is core. Yes. The only reason you would have these two tiers is for people that aren't playing Space Age without quality, and then having two tiers starts to make more sense. I agree with that. But what I'm trying to get at here is Space Age shouldn't be balanced around people who refuse to play with the quality mechanic, right? Like, it's fine that people have that choice, but that's not what it should be balanced around. It shouldn't be balanced around, oh, let's make the game experience perfect if you never touch quality, because then quality is going to be way too powerful. Because if it's already easy, it's just, I don't think the balance is perfect right now, and I think they kind of tried to do both ways, and I think that's done some harm. Like, I think legendary beacons and modules and buildings are way too good in a way that kind of invalidates some of the core gameplay of Factorio, because doing it without those is possible. I don't know. It's hard to get all my thoughts together. I said some things in my review that might be more coherent. It's also weird because they're trying to balance 3 games now, both like non-Space Age, Space Age, and Space Age for people who play without quality. This Santa fuzz is going to get everywhere, isn't it? Yeah, and fluffs, I almost feel like that's a mistake, is what I'm getting at. It's like, if quality is such a divisive mechanic that some people literally want to play without it, then either you have to come to terms with, like, you're adding a mechanic into your game that's really divisive, or it's a mechanic that you can literally turn it off and still have a great experience. If that's possible, then why are you adding it? It's really, there's a lot of really interesting design questions around quality in particular, and there's been a lot of people on Reddit who have had some very negative things to say about it, with good arguments behind those things that they've said. It's not like, oh, you're just being a hater. It's like, no, you actually make some good points, and I don't know if I can just dismiss that. Even though it is a very negative take, there are kind of some good points too. I've seen quite a few posts with that. So quality is a really interesting thing. My main take, just to summarize what I said in my review, is that as a player, it is fun. I had a lot of fun with it. From a design perspective, for the longevity of a game, I'm not sure if I love it. And I don't mean I hate it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm not sure if I love it. Like, I am still kind of in that question mark undecided category from a design perspective. From a player perspective, it was a big check mark. I loved it. I loved making the Gambletron. I loved upgrading things to Epic. I loved getting legendary stuff. Like, it was really fun. But it was fun in a way that I think a cheat code is fun, and I don't think a cheat code provides longevity to a game. So that's the question mark for me, is that design sense. It kind of felt more like a cheat code than a game mechanic. Or a mod is maybe another way to put it. It felt like kind of a mod that you turn on once or twice and then not play with most of the time. So yeah, I don't know. There's that. I guess we're not talking about military anymore. The Krydex tangents. All right, this gets an F. I don't even know what it is. No, I know what it is. Tesla ammo. I saw. Some of you guys might have seen the Reddit thread too. But basically, Tesla ammo has caused plenty of players to make a mistake in a way that I think the game would be better off with not having the ammo. Because this thing, a Tesla turret, and this thing, a Tesla gun, do not work the same way. This one requires ammo, and this one does not. And that feels really weird. And there were reports of players who didn't build a Tesla turret because they didn't want to have to supply the Tesla ammo, which is an inaccurate take because they don't need the ammo, but they thought it did. They assumed it did. And I think it's reasonable to assume, if you see something called Tesla ammo, oh yeah, well, the turret's gonna need it and the gun is gonna need it. It just makes sense, right? I mean, this thing is literally crafted with the Tesla guns as an ingredient. So it makes sense they would both take the Tesla ammo, but they don't. And then there were also people who crafted the Tesla ammo and sent it onto their ships to go to Nauvis because they assumed they would need it. And so it's like there are all sorts of gameplay mistakes that have happened because of the Tesla ammo existing. And I think that is an example of like, I think it just would have been better if neither thing needed the ammo. Yeah, exactly. Azrael, that's I didn't mention that, but that's part of it too, is that the Factoriopedia links you to the ammo, the Tesla ammo page from the page of the turret. When the turret doesn't need the ammo, it doesn't touch the ammo, it's just a laser turret basically, but it links you to the ammo page, which implies it would need it. So I think the ammo was a big fail, the Tesla ammo. The game would be better if this thing just pulled energy from your suit, or if it just had its own little infinite energy. I mean, that would maybe be a lore fail if this thing didn't require ammo, but I think it would be better gameplay. Yeah, Maria, that is exactly what I'm talking about. You sent 5,000 Tesla ammo to Nauvis thinking the turrets would need it. They do not. So in that sense, I give the ammo an F. The Tesla gun itself seems cool. Are we ranking the weaponry now? I feel like we need to rank all the personal weaponry together. It does feel easier to do categories for the military thing. Maybe I should do radar. Radar's kind of a weird... Are there any other really weird ones like radar that we're gonna rank totally in a different way? I don't think... I think radar is the only thing that feels more economic than military. How do I feel about radars? Do I like the mechanic? I've never really thought about it before now. I mean, I'm sure I've thought about it in some capacities, but I've never thought like, do I like radars as a mechanic? Do I like revealing chunks? Do I like having a medium distance that's always revealed and a bigger distance that it reveals once in a while? How do I feel about all that? I like it. I think it's decent. I like exploring with radars. They feel a little bit like checkboxes, like, oh, I gotta put radar over there. Oh yeah, good point. I moved them up to B because I like being able to transmit the circuit networks. They are like little circuit senders, which is really cool. And quality is a pretty strong effect on them as well, which I like. I like being able to have bigger radii. I think regular vanilla radars felt pretty weak. I would get the Big Brother mod sometimes to play with. So I'm glad that we have a way to make them better now, which is quality. So I'll give them an A. I think radars are pretty cool. Do they deserve an A though for that? I don't know. No, I don't think. I think they're B. All right. Capture biter, someone said, is a little different. It is. It is a weapon though, or an ammo. So it's technically an ammo, but it is for a very different purpose. All right, let's move on. Walls and gates. Walls. They do what you need them to do. I'll give them a C. The gates are cool. They can do cool stuff. I also rarely build them. But you can't... This just continues to kind of be the major theme of the whole military tab. Walls kind of aren't even really that needed. With all the new weaponry, you can easily make... Between lasers and missile turrets and Tesla turrets, you can easily make a defense that kills everything before it even gets in range. Not to mention, quality turrets have further range, which even further reduces the need for walls, because if you have a bunch of rare laser turrets, they're going to kill everything before it even gets in range, including behemoth spitters. So walls are fine. They do what they need to do. If you're building a defense that relies on dragon's teeth and sending enemies to be in flamethrower range, you are going to need walls. But they're even less necessary than they've ever been before with all of the new weaponry and the higher ranged weaponry. So I will leave this at C for both of them. Your gate is making Yeah, my gate is driving through the wall and construction bots will rebuild it. All right, let's rank the personal weapons. So we'll start with the pistola. Where is that bad boy? Oh, is it not here because you can't craft it? Oh, that's funny. I don't think the pistol's here. If it was here, I'd give it an F. Oh, no, it is here. All right, there you are. I give you an F. It's just... It kind of goes with my wooden crate. I gave the wooden crate an F. I gave the wooden power pole a D or an F. It's just... It's almost this remnant of a game that no longer exists. There is such a short window of time in the Factorio experience where you would ever use a pistol. You get the submachine gun research so early. I think it's the first research you do towards military, right? I guess... Yeah, so it might be the 5th research you do, but it's such a cheap research. It only costs red packs. You can handcraft one with just a few iron and maybe a copper. I don't even remember if it costs copper. So it feels like the pistol is just this like token idea of we'll give you something so you can shoot some bullets at the biters, which feels important. I do think that if you had nothing to defend yourself with, that would be kind of annoying. But would it really be that bad if they just spawned you with your submachine gun? Because it's kind of one of those upgrades that's so necessary. It feels more like, this feels like the core basic weapon compared to the pistol. The pistol feels almost so bad that you're just trying to get rid of it, and this is your basic weapon. So I give the pistol an F. Your goal is just to not have one. And yeah, it's also kind of annoying because you get a new one every time you die. And yeah, you can't make legendary pistols. Yeah, pistols have all sorts of issues. I give the submachine gun a C. It does what it needs to do. You can kill biters, you know, in the early game, especially when it's just small biters attacking you. You can fend off an attack with just your weapon, which is important. And that's why yellow ammo gets a C. Same reason. Does exactly what you need it to do. I almost feel like bumping that up because it's just so important now to fight off asteroids, you know, but necessity doesn't make a higher grade. We already determined that. Most of the rest of these are going to get fairly low grades because they're completely unnecessary. I don't think I made any of them. But we'll still chat about each one. A lot of this is hearsay. This is me talking through others' experiences and what I know to be true about them, or well, I could be wrong, but what I think I know to be true about them, and how I've seen other people talk about them, and how necessary I think they are, or how helpful I think they are. So the shotgun is more powerful than it's been before, but I still think it kind of holds this place of like, why are you going? I mean, like by the time you have a shotgun, you could almost make a car, which has its own machine gun, which is probably going to be more necessary than the shotgun. I think shotguns are good for clearing biter nests at this point, because they're a bit better at that. They did boost the damage quite a bit. But it still feels like one of those, like, we're not playing a shooter game. We're not playing Vampire Survivors. Do we really need multiple projectile options that more or less do the same thing? I just feel like this is an area where we have too many choices, and the basic shotgun feels like an unnecessary one. The combat shotgun is kind of dope, so I'll give it a C. If you've got your combat shotgun and piercing shotgun rounds, that actually feels like I'm getting something done. I'm kind of like melting we used to use this back in my day, because I'm an old man. This used to be how we cut down trees because we didn't have grenades. So the combat shotgun is kind of awesome. It actually feels like, what's the right word? You feel powerful. You're like, ha 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 ha, yes. Like when you hold down the space bar and it's just like, boom, 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 boom. Like it feels cool. So I give it a C for that. Even though in some ways it still isn't fulfilling that different of a role than a machine gun, it does feel significantly different and it feels significantly more powerful. And so it earns its spot, I think. Pistols have a rocket capacity of 10,000? Wait, what? As in you could put 10,000 of them in a single rocket going to space? That's hilarious. The personal flamethrower. This is a weird one. Because flamethrowers are like simultaneously immensely overpowered, but the personal flamethrower feels so niche. I give it a D. It's fairly powerful when you want it for certain reasons. But most of the time you just don't need to make one. Because you're using vehicles to clear biter nests and not your... Like, by the time you have this, you are probably using other things to clear nests. But it works if you need it to. And the ammo, I'll just put the ammo with it. The ammo is not really special here. The personal rocket launcher feels important, both to do the capture thing and also just... Like, explosive rockets from your own personal self feel like a decent way to clear some nests. Like, it earns its spot. And then we got the last two. These two are interesting. I didn't use either of them, and I felt no need to use either of them. That being said, the Tesla gun is pretty cool, and it seems useful if you are doing hand-to-hand combat. Oh yeah, and nuclear bombs from the personal launcher, also fun. So yeah, there's a little bit of like, these feel like they exist for fun, not for necessity, and they accomplish that role. The new railgun actually seems overpowered as heck for killing I'm gonna put it a rank up on power level alone, because you can kill big demolishers with them, and you don't even need to do anything special. I actually think they're too good, but that's a different topic. So all that to say, as far as the weaponry goes, I think most of them are fine. I think we could do away with pistols forever. And having 2 shotguns feels unnecessary to me. Because it's like, do we really need 3 different projectile weapons? Plus all the different ammos making even more combinations of those things. Again, it feels like the game has more solutions than it has problems, which is to some level fine. At some point it feels like we just have too much. Anyway. Moving on. Let's talk capsules. Capsules feel like another one of those polarizing things. I've seen so many people try to like defend them and make arguments for them, and it always feels like someone's like, it's like that fan of the worst football team of all of them, and they're trying to make arguments for, like, they're gonna be good this year, I swear. Like, look at what look, they had this one guy who like scored 5 points once, or whatever. I'm just making stuff up. But it kind of feels like that vibe, right? Like these feel like something that their existence has to be argued for, and it's not like they earn their place in any way. It's like people are trying to find reasons to not ignore that they exist. Yes, I've seen videos of people destroying demolishers with the poison capsules. It does look like it works, but there's like 100 ways to kill demolishers already. I don't feel like we need more. And the slowdown capsules, again, it's like, oh my gosh. Okay, so I guess you can use one if you really want to go turn... It feels like you're trying to turn fighting a biter base into an ARPG. But like, we have Path of Exile, we have Diablo 3 and 4, we have Path of Exile 2 coming out tomorrow. We don't need an ARPG in Factorio. That's not why most of us are playing it. Most of us can just grab this fuzz. I'm gonna be eating Santa hat fuzz for the rest of my life. We don't need an ARPG in Factorio. Most of us are fine to just grab one weapon that's good enough, whether it's explosive rockets, whether it's a tank, whether it's a car with its machine gun. I just feel like capsules are this category of like, we really don't need it. I'm giving them an F. Please yell at me in the comments, but I'm giving them an F. On that note, we'll move to grenades, because those are kind of a similar mechanic. Grenades feel at least slightly more useful, because they are an area of effect weapon before we have rockets, and they're good for clearing trees. Cluster grenades are a big enough upgrade over regular grenades that they feel like a different thing, so I'll keep them at the C level. I don't think they'd... Sometimes it feels like the variety is unnecessary, but here I think the cluster grenades are good enough. Path of Exile 2, I'm going to be slamming it. You better believe it. So yes. Yeah, and some of these rankings certainly change on Death World, and I realize that's true. I don't have a ton of Death World experience, but even in my Death World experience, I think most of these actually still apply. I think... Granted, my Death World experience was not on 2.0, so it's a little different now with the nests going higher in health. It probably... I'm guessing the shotgun itself, because you don't have this one yet, I'm guessing this shotgun is probably higher on Death World. It feels completely unnecessary on non-Death World, though. Alright. Moving on. Mines. This just got a change in today's patch. You no longer can use them on your space platforms as defending against asteroids. I'm giving them an F. This feels like the most non-Factorio weapon. Like, yeah, you're doing defenses, but you're defending against infinite waves. Biters keep regenerating new biters. So the idea of placing a one-time use mine just feels so weird. I'm gonna go on a slightly wider gaming tangent. I have played very few video games in all of history. All of my history, not the world's history. But like, I've played probably thousands of video games in my life. I've played a lot of genres. I'm not just like a guy who only plays one game. I get bored with games very fast, which means I play a lot of different games, from shooters to RTSs. I mean, all kinds of games where mines exist, I've played those types of games. I have found very, very few games where mines feel like a mechanic that works out well. Because they often feel like gimmicky to the point where it's like, well, I have a mine and they're powerful, so I guess I'm gonna drop the mine in a hallway and try to lure the enemies into this hallway. Or I'm gonna place... It's just... They feel like a mechanic that works better for multiplayer, where you're actually playing with other humans' brains and you're using what are arguably actual military tactics. Yes, you're doing them in a gaming way, but you're still like, it's a brain versus a brain. Like, mines feel like they fit in actual human against human combat, both in real life, as we've seen actual wars do, but also in gaming. But I don't think in PvE environments where you, the player, are going against either a computer player or against a computer opponent, I don't think mines end up playing out very well. And I'm trying to think of a single game where the mines were good. And I feel like there have been a couple. I'm just trying to think of what they are. One example that comes to mind is Descent 2. Bear with me. Descent 2, if you guys even know what that game is, it's a great game. 6 Degrees of Freedom, it was like back in the 90s, or maybe, I think it was in the 90s, yeah. And you would fly a ship through the tunnels, but like it was like a 3D shooter, because you were in like a little ship. It was a really cool design because it kind of mixed the like linear-ish type levels. It wasn't open world. You couldn't just fly anywhere in space, but it was still like a spaceship flight. So it was like, imagine like the old Doom game, but if levels could go up. And a hallway, it's not like a second floor, it's literally just up. And now your whole orientation is like, well, now that's the floor. It was really cool what it did to your brain. Anyway, that being said, the game had these smart mines where you would place a mine, and if an enemy ran into it, it would not only explode and deal damage, but it would shoot a bunch of plasma bolts at enemies that were also not next to the mine. So it could hit enemies like halfway across the map or whatever. And also games where mines can move on their own and like target enemies and follow them, that tends to be better. I realize this is a complete tangent. I just think mines in games are generally overrated. They're almost never used, especially in games where you're not playing versus human opponents. So there's my hot take. Moving on. What else do we have? I guess we'll do ammos next. Or maybe we'll do ammos as they come up. We'll do ammos as they come up. We'll do robots next. The robots are another category of really cool and really unnecessary. It just feels like another fun way to tackle biters. you can easily avoid building any of them with what feels like no downside. But if you do build them, they work really well. Like, they're insanely powerful. The destroyers are nuts. If you guys have never upgraded combat robot count a few times and just made 100 of these guys follow you, you've never lived. They melt biter bases immediately. It's really cool. At the same time, I come back to this idea of like, but why? Like, why do you need them? You already have tanks with explosive cannon shells that melt bases. You already have Spidertrons to melt bases. You already have so many ways. It's just another way. It's fine. I like them. They're cool. They feel unnecessary. It also feels unnecessary to have 3 types when they all kind of do the same thing. I think paring it down to 2 types would probably be good. The defenders and the destroyers are basically doing the same thing. They're both following you. They both make a cloud. It's just these guys are shooting bullets. These guys are shooting electricity. It mattered less before because it was only against biters, and biters didn't have very much defense against either thing. Now it's kind of weird because depending on whether you're fighting demolishers or biters or pentapods, you might use one over the other, which is weirdly cool, but then it makes these feel less good because they're not better against everything, if that makes sense. Although I guess no, I think these are still better against everything, right? Nothing resists electricity other than asteroids. So I guess these guys are still the top, tippy top. I give them a C because they're cool. I would give them a B, but they're unnecessary, so that knocks them back down to C. And these guys just get a D. They're whatever. You use them if you want. They're fine. Like, the follower robot idea would be cooler, in my opinion, if... Yeah, I'm gonna talk about a game I've never played. Path of Exile has a reserve system for minions. So, like, if you're summoning minions, you have so much that you can, like, basically spend, but once you've summoned the minion, it just stays spent. So you can summon like 100 worth of minions. That sort of system feels like it could be cool for Factorio. We're like, oh, I can have 3 defender robots that just follow me forever, and they're not on a timer. That would feel better than I have them and I can randomly throw them like a grenade, but then they only last 45 seconds. I don't think the timed mechanic plays out very well. And it just makes them useful for attacking bases. I guess you could have some in your pocket for like an emergency, pocket sand to throw at the biters, you know, pocket robots, like, hope I don't die. But again, it's like, in what world do you need pocket robots to not die? Because that means something has gone terribly wrong already. Your turrets are supposed to be taking care of that. This is Factorio. This is not an ARPG. So it really does feel like a lot of these mechanics are almost meant to be for a slightly different kind of game than what Factorio is, and they're kind of taking you in different directions. That being said, some players like to play that way, and I'm glad we have the option. Certainly, I'm glad the mechanics exist in the game. More what I'm getting into with some of these questions is, are these core elements that Factorio needs, or are they elements that Factorio could do without? Is kind of what we're getting at with some of these questions. All right, so we've got ammo, we've got the armors, and then we've got the turrets. So let's go with, yeah, Senior Fiance. I saw a video on Reddit of someone taking out demolishers like they're nothing with the destroyers. Demolishers are the worm, destroyers are the bot. Yeah. All right, let's talk about ammo. I feel like that's pretty chill. Piercing ammo, it does what it needs to do. I think it's necessary to have an upgrade. It feels like it's considerably more expensive, but it's important to upgrade to against the biters that have more armor. So I do like that. Uranium ammo, it's one of those, like, it's cool, but why do we have it? Like, by the time you have uranium ammo, it's just one more solution among a sea of solutions. It doesn't feel worth rushing. It's not like, oh my god, once I have uranium ammo, everything's easy. It's true, if you're using gun turrets into the late game, you'll want to move to uranium ammo because it's easy to, you know, once you're doing uranium processing, you have so many of the dark green rocks, like it's kind of cheap to upgrade, so why not? But yeah, with flamethrowers and laser turrets, this just feels completely pointless. Like, why would you? Speaking of flamethrowers, bloop. Maybe... I literally have zero concept of how much damage flamethrowers do on Gleba. Can somebody tell me? How are pentapods versus flamethrowers? Are they strong against flame? I'm imagining with the way they dance around that flamethrowers are kind of bad against them. I've never tried, and I've actually not seen any videos of people trying, so I don't even know. Which, yeah, probably means they're not great. But they are completely overpowered against biters. A few dragon's teeth plus a few flamethrowers, and you almost don't even need anything else. You need a couple turrets to take out the front enemies that are ahead of the wave of flame, and everything else after that is quite literally toast. Absolutely toasted. So flamethrowers are OP. They should use more ammo or do less damage or both. Another hot take is I don't think damage upgrades should be infinite. It feels weird that you can just keep upgrading damage forever, because it completely changes the balance of stuff. It feels like the end game balance is already there with, like, biters stop evolving at Behemoth. So your weaponry should also stop evolving at some point, and then there should be some amount of strategy that's required to make things work. And if you want to play with more enemies, you need to have a better strategy or more weaponry or something. But it feels like kind of weird because it's like even on the highest settings, you can just out upgrade everything because the enemies stop getting harder. You can't make them on Gleba? Wait, you can make oil on Gleba, right? No, I guess you can't. I guess you only make lube from jelly. Can you... You could do coal... You could do coal liquefaction. You could make coal from carbon and do coal liquefaction. It sounds really inefficient, but flamethrowers only need like 1/1000th of 1 unit per 10 billion damage they deal. So I bet that alone would be enough oil for flamethrower turrets. They're S on power level alone, but I actually don't like how powerful they are. And I actually feel the same about laser turrets. I wish I needed more than just a wall of laser turrets on Navis, and that really is all you need, even for behemoths. All right, moving on with the ammo. Wait, why am I going turrets or are we doing ammo? I got distracted. We were doing ammo. I don't know how we got onto turrets. Okay, cannon shells. This kind of goes to the tank. I think I gave the tank a B because now it has, now you can put exoskeletons and shields in it. I love the tank now. I think it's in the perfect place of a manually controlled biter nest killing machine, and it actually does it really well. It's actually part of why these things feel lower now is because you don't, it used to feel like it was better to hunt biter bases on your own 2 feet. But now with tanks where they are, I feel like tanks are actually just better in almost every way, and you might as well use tanks. And I think the ammo, I think the explosive shells are great. It is true, these shells are nice for killing nests only, but you kind of end up taking out everything a little better with the explosive shells. These have a pretty strong use of taking out small demolishers in literal seconds. Like 2 seconds maybe. So that actually feels worth it. These kind of feel like by the time you have them, they're pointless, because at that point you've moved on to automated ways of taking out enemies and defeating stuff. They're fine if you want to use them, but that's true of most of the things in the D category. It's fine, but you don't need it. Rockets, I give... All right, vibes alone, I think we gotta go A level for atomic bomb. A for atomic. They're really powerful. You don't need them though. I can't give them an A. I'll give them a B. I didn't even make a single one in my last playthrough, but they're really cool. I'm glad they exist. Like, I think if you're gonna add a weapon that's not necessary to the game, it needs to be really effing cool, right? And that atomic bombs, they do meet that bar. Oh yeah, atomic bomb the asteroid. I mean, obviously it would be overpowered, but it'd be sweet. I was thinking you were gonna say we send them to a space platform and drop the bombs from space. Kind of like the orbital ion cannon vibes. It would be too powerful, but so is half the stuff we have in the game already, so does that really matter? What about these? Are these fine at sea? I actually feel like they both have their place. You need to avoid using the explosive rockets anywhere where the rockets might come near your base, but they're good in all the other situations. So it actually feels like, for once, a reasonable trade-off between the two. And these deal more single target damage, which can matter for things like stompers. Like, if your main goal with missile turrets is to take out stompers, I actually think it's better to use these. Partially because they might be on top of your base and you'd blow up your own base, and then also just because they deal more damage. You'll kill the stomper faster. All right. Railgun ammo. It's the only type. So it just exists so railguns can shoot. It's fine. It's a little on the cheap end, actually. Though it kind of, the balance of railgun ammo needs to be done carefully because you need a lot of it on your space platform. It's not like something you just defend your base with a little bit here and there. So because of that, I think it needed to be not too expensive. Yeah, I don't know how they could have done that differently. Artillery ammo. I love artillery. I don't like that the ammo only stacks to 1. It feels unnecessarily cumbersome. Because by the time you've got artillery, you have ways to solve the stack size of 1 by just having more trains or more bots. I kind of like... I feel like I could complain about the cost, but I kind of like the challenge for one. It's like, oh, if I want to shoot my enemies with hundreds of artillery shells, that's actually going to cost me something. So on the one hand, I kind of like that. On the other hand, it feels a bit prohibitive, and it feels like artillery is one of those things where it feels like an accomplishment once you've got it set up and it's actually defending your base. And now the artillery can actually take care of all the biters that are in the range, and that feels really cool. But I also kind of am like, then that means artillery is not going to happen for a long time. So it's a bit of a pro and con. But artillery is really sweet, so I give it a B. The targeting remote. Actually, the targeting remote has a little bit of its own thing we need to talk about, because it's not just the ability to shoot your artillery. It actually lets you shoot artillery further than the automatic range. I think that was a brilliant move. I think that's a great design decision. Because it allows you to still feel like you have some power as a player to reach out and kill something. What game was it that had a weapon? I don't even remember whether it was a railgun or a sniper or a rocket launcher, and the like flavor text was like, reach out and touch someone. Was that like Quake 3 Arena or something? I'm sure someone in chat knows what I'm talking about, or you can Google it. I don't remember what it was. But that's kind of how I feel about the targeting remote, where it's like you can let yourself kind of, I get to go tell that base it's dead now, you know, and that's really fun. So I think that's actually a really great design decision, that you can manually target further than they automatically shoot. I like that. On that note, artillery turrets get a B. They're satisfying to set up. I think locking them behind Vulcanus feels okay to me. That at first I was a little wary. I was like, that feels a bit too much like not railroading. That's not what railroading is. Just a bit too much like hurdles that the player has to go through to get to artillery. But I think it's fine, the way it works out. It is kind of sad that you can't solve the biters before you leave Nauvis, because that's kind of what it feels like you want to do. But without artillery, you can't really easily keep them out of your pollution cloud. So it kind of feels like you're left a little bit scared of Nauvis getting overrun while you're gone until you get artillery set up. But then the unfortunate reality that still remains true is a wall of laser turrets is all you need. So there's a part of me that wishes they gave you artillery before you left Nauvis so you could have your fun with it. Because by the time you kind of need to set up an alternative to artillery before you leave Nauvis, and then by the time you have artillery, you now definitely don't need artillery because you've already set up the alternative solution. So I'm actually going to knock artillery down to C purely for that issue that we now have with it. It's kind of, I bet fewer players are going to ever use artillery now because of what they've changed. And that is a little bit sad because the artillery is actually really cool. And I think we're now going to see fewer and fewer people use it because it's just not necessary, because you already set up your Nauvis defenses to be impenetrable while you're gone on the other planets. So by the time you have artillery, why do you need artillery at this point? I literally had that exact thing happen in my playthrough. I would have used artillery to help clear the biters to keep myself safe, but I couldn't because I hadn't gone to Vulcanus yet. And by the time I went to Vulcanus, my base was fine. I just added a few laser turrets to problem spots. And so it just felt like I have no reason to go put artillery back on Nauvis until I want to have fun. And do you want to know how long it took me to do that? It was literally after I beat the game, I went back and added some artillery just because I wanted to have fun with it. But I had zero reason to ever do it. Which again gets back to some of the deeper military questions of Factorio, is there's often not a reason to build a lot of these things. All right. Gun turrets, solid B. I actually think they're one of the cooler designs. They make a cool sound. The little shells flying out is cool. I like gun turrets a lot. I actually think they feel like they have the most play to them of anything. I like that you need them on space platforms, even. Now we get to the new stuff. These guys... I've already said a lot of what I have to say about these. I'm going to start them all in C. We'll move them around. It just feels like solutions looking for problems, kind of. It's like, oh, let's add missile turrets to the game. Okay, but the players don't have a reason to use them. Okay, we'll add these large asteroids that have resistances to everything, such that you kind of need to put them on the ship that's going to Aquilo. I don't find that to be all that interesting. They are decent against stompers. I ran into a problem where even a wall of these cannot kill stompers alone. I kind of found that frustrating because it feels like you're supposed to need them against stompers, but it actually turns out that this is the king against stompers. So going to Fulgora before Gleba is even more of an issue, and going to Gleba to get missile turrets is completely pointless because they're not good against anything. The only reason you need these is for big asteroids, because they're not even good enough to take out stompers by themselves, because stompers are fast enough that by the time they lock on and aim, the stomper's already on your butt. So even with a wall of missile turrets, it wasn't literally like every square was a missile turret wall, but it was a lot of missile turrets, and the stompers were still getting through and destroying stuff. I would still kill the stomper. It's not like I lost my base, but that being said, I think missile turrets felt the most railroady of anything. Well, maybe not quite true, but I didn't love missile turrets. They look cool. I love the idea, like from a conceptual lore sense, like missile turrets are so cool. It just felt like they were the least necessary, and we only needed them in one very exact place, which was going to Aquilo on our space platforms. So I give them a D. Really cool, but really unnecessary. I'll leave the Tesla turret at C, partially because I think it's the coolest in terms of the visual effects, and they actually have a good use against the pentapods. They really do take care of them in the way that you need them to be taken care of. And they also don't require ammo, which is nice, despite what the Factoriopedia may lead you to believe. So, yeah. And the railguns are even more railroady than the missile turrets. They're like pure railroad, like you will build railguns on your winning space platform and you will like it. I think it's fine. I'm glad that we had a reason to build them. they're so cool, but they're also like, it's just hard. Factorio is such a hard game to balance around military. The more that I think about this, the more I do not envy the developers, because the player base is very split. There are some people who love the military side. All they do is play what's it called? Not Death World. I'm thinking about the mod. What's the mod called? It's almost there. Rampant, thank you. I was like, am I gonna remember it before chat says it, or is chat gonna tell me first? But yeah, Rampant. So like, some people only play with the Rampant mod because they love it. And obviously, like, for a mod like that, you do need these more tools. So yeah, it's just a weird space where you're trying to balance military in a game where some people play it wanting that tower defense element to be a core part of their Factorio experience, but you're also balancing it for people that want it to feel more like a background thing, where you are just kind of doing enough to keep the biters at bay, and that's really all you do. And then you're balancing it with people who have biters completely turned off, which is a large percentage of the Factorio player base. It's not like, oh, I actually think there's more people who play with biters off than play with Death World or Rampant type things. I think the player base is slightly skewed towards less military rather than more. That's only a hunch. I have no evidence, so don't ask me for evidence. Just my hunch and being around the community as long as I have. It's also hard though, because I'm biased that way, so I could be wrong. That being said, railguns are really freaking cool. I just wish they felt less of a... It felt like they came up with like, ooh, a railgun would be cool. Let's put a railgun in the game. Okay, but why would you ever make a railgun? Okay, let's find a reason to require the player to make railguns. These giant asteroids, done. And that it's just hard because it's like they're so cool, but because that's really their only purpose, like, why do I exist? To pass butter? Like, oh my god, that's it? Like, come on. It feels like the butter robot problem with railguns, and I think it's just a little sad. Like, I want to put railguns at S because they're so freaking cool. That's what S stands for. So freaking cool. But they just have no reason. And yet I say this and it sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm kind of not, because there's also a part of me that knows that if the dev team had added a ton more enemies and maybe even more reasons to make a railgun, I might not have liked that. I might not have preferred that. That might have been too much focus on the military. That might have been too much difficulty on the military or complexity on the military. So there's this weird sense of like, I don't actually know if they did it wrong. And yet there's still a part of me that's dissatisfied with how things are, in that overall sense of, it feels like we have all these toys and nothing to do with it. But I'm not sure I want enough stuff to do with it that I need to use all these toys. So then that kind of leaves me wondering if we even needed these toys in the first place. However, they are really cool. And so, you know, I get into this loop of thought process. And I know I've talked to enough people that I know some of you are in a similar space. I know there are some people that disagree and they love it and they think it's great. I know there are some people that think it's actually all negative, and biters have always been, you know, a lot of people say military is the weakest part of Factorio. I'm interested to hear how those people feel about Space Age. Because I've always been somewhat in the middle. Anyway, all that being said, we will rank the armor, and then I think we will be done with the video. Capture robots, I'm going to put it a C, because they do what they need to do. They don't do more than that. They don't do less than that. They look cool. I actually really like the idea of capturing bases, though, so we're going to put them at a B. Yeah, Senior Fiance, I think my best idea that I've had, kind of on a similar note to what you're saying, is an option for Nauvis to evolve as you go throughout the planets. I don't think it should be default. but I don't think Death World accomplishes the same idea as what I'm getting at. Because behemoth biters are just not big and bad enough. You need new types of enemies and bigger evolutions of enemies to where missile turrets, lightning turrets, and railguns are necessary on Nauvis. Or at least, maybe not necessary, but some combination of them would be necessary to have more powerful defenses. And there's a limit on laser turret upgrades, so that you can't just make lasers do billions of damage and be done with it. So I would love to see a version, a checkbox where you could be like, I want the Nauvis enemy experience to keep evolving. So after I go to Fulgora, something triggers, I bring back some alien incubation baby that you know, spreads like wildfire, and now I have to deal with this new threat that gives me something that maybe I can deal with it with my guns and flamers and lasers, but I could also use laser turrets to help with that. Or maybe you kind of have it like a triangle where like, now there's a new enemy that's kind of hard to deal with, but I can do it. But as they evolve, I really will need artillery for it. So then I want to go to Vulcanus. And, you know, you kind of feel like you have a reason to bring all these weaponries back for crazy defense on Nauvis. It does feel like a mod could do this. But it also feels weird that you need a mod to have reasons to use the weapons they've given you in the game. So like, on that sense, was it worth their dev time to like put all this work into this military stuff? But at the same time, they put all this work into making the military stuff. So it feels weird, because it feels like they decided it's worth our time to put a lot of emphasis on making these new military buildings. And I don't feel like the same level of effort and care and investment was put into making the using of the buildings an equally good experience. Maybe that's the best way I can phrase it. It felt like they put more dev time and resources into making the turrets and the ammo and the solutions, and it doesn't feel like I'm equally satisfied with the problems that I need those solutions to solve. That's, I think, the best way I can summarize my thoughts. I'm going to end on that because it felt coherent, and we're going to rank the armor. I think with quality being a thing, I think we now have too many armors problem. I think, again, if quality didn't exist, I think having all of these would actually be really nice. I think now that we have quality, do we really need 2 levels of power armor? And do we really need 2 levels of... Well, I guess it's kind of more like these 3 feel like they really don't need to be 3 separate things. Even these 2, I feel like these could just be 1 armor. It's nice to have your upgrade though, I don't mind it. But it feels like one of these could be cut out. I don't know which one. Maybe the Power Armor Mark II feels unnecessary. The mech suit is S tier. I love the mech suit. I have the one tiniest complaint about the mech suit, which is that it bobs up and down in a way that actually is moving your character, and sometimes that can mean that you're trying to select a building, or you do select a building, and then your character bobs down a little bit, and then it's unselected, and that just, like, but that's such a tiny complaint. And then I think the other tiny complaint is that apparently if you're running, and this is something I think mods can fix and will fix, I hope, if your whole base is concreted and you're running over buildings, apparently you lose the concrete walking bonus when you're in the air over the concrete, which I know from a lore perspective might make some amount of sense. The other argument is that it actually doesn't, because from a lore perspective, if you jump into the air and have jetpacks, why would you slow down? Like, your momentum would keep you traveling forwards. Obviously, air friction, but that's, you know. That being said, I think from a gameplay perspective, you should run at the same speed that you fly, and your flying should include the tile bonus too. I know that technically if you were to like turn around over the tiles, that then would no longer make sense that you'd have a bonus. But from a gameplay sense, I think just traveling at the same constant speed everywhere feels better. So I'm imagining mods will fix that. I didn't concrete my whole world, so I didn't even really run into it. But all that being said, mech armor is S tier. I love how much well, yes, I love how much inventory space you get. I love how much grid space you get. It just feels like such a huge boost. I love it. Now, what about these guys? I mean, Power Armor Mark II used to be the king, but now it kind of feels like it just exists to be upgraded into mech armor. I feel like Power Armor Mark II is the biggest casualty. Light armor, you just make it as soon as you can, and you replace it as soon as you can. I'll give it a D. It's nice to help you not die to biters immediately. It's another one of those things where I feel like if the game deleted this and people's memories of it were deleted, nobody would miss it. Or nobody would think, oh, this game's missing something. You know, like, I think it would be fine. The heavy armor feels like it fills that role of like protecting me. It needs some steel, which is not that advanced. So by the time you're needing protection, you can get it. Anyway. Modular armor, power armor, and power armor Mark II. I do think with quality being a thing, I think one of these could be removed, you know, because now mech armor's here and it kind of, but mech armor does only come from one planet. I think I kind of feel like power armor Mark I could be done away with and we just have a single power armor and then that's what upgrades to mech armor. It feels a little, I don't know. There's just like a lot of tiers and it doesn't feel like each one has its own like time in the sun. It kind of feels like in some way you're going to skip over one of these pretty much, you know, and it kind of doesn't feel like we need all of them. So I'll say Power Armor Mark II keeps its space. Maybe at a B, because you use it until you have a mech suit, and that's potentially Gleba and Vulcanus. If you save Fulgora for last, you ain't seen that mech suit for a while. So Power Armor Mark II feels pretty important. All right. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I hope what I've sounded like is not so much I dislike the military in Factorio. It's that my experience of it is one where I leave the game feeling a bit confused about what they're going for and about what I'm supposed to be enjoying out of it. Because I really like all of the tools. I really like the combat robots even. They're fun to play with. So I hope that you're hearing a bit of that mixture of my review is like, I like a lot of this stuff. The experience feels a bit odd, and I end up playing, before Space Age, I ended up playing without biters most of the time, partially because of that. And I'm interested to see what my interest level looks like to play with enemies going forward. I really liked the Demolishers. I don't think I've talked about this yet in this video, but I loved the Demolishers because they had their territory. It gave you a reason to use military stuff, but it would only happen on your time, and there was no threat to your base outside of that. So it's like, I choose when to fight, I have fun when I go fight, and then I don't worry about it the rest of the time. And I liked that kind of cycle. The other thing I'm really interested in is the Pyanodon's enemies expansion, Pi Aliens, I believe it will be called. And that will be interesting to see how they tackle it, because I think it's going to be a very different approach than what Core Factorio does, and so I'm very interested to see what take they have on it, and if it's more in line with what might be fun for me, or if it also is not really working for me. I'm interested to see that, but that's a long way in the future, so we'll see when that happens. But as always, this has been a blast. This is my last tier listing video because we run out of items in Factorio. So next we're gonna do tier listing of every item in Pyanodons. JK. I don't even know what half of the items in Pyanodons are because there's thousands of them, and I think that would be a monumental task. Though if I ever beat Pyanodons, it might be worth doing. That would be hilarious. Anyway, I hope you guys have had fun. Please do extend this challenge to other content creators that you know. I'd love to see other people's takes on these tier lists. Really, I hope you all have felt this. It's just a great excuse to talk about Factorio. That's why we're here. We want to talk about Factorio. We want to talk about the stuff. We all have different opinions, and for the most part, they are all valuable opinions. I really do think, you know, variety is the spice of life, and the fact that some of you maybe love landmines is really fun. Obviously, I don't love landmines, but that doesn't mean you can't, and I hope you're not feeling like anything I've said is invalidating what you like. No one should tell you what you're allowed to like or not like. and that certainly is not my goal. Tier listing is just a fun excuse to argue about things, and I hope you guys have felt the same. I am gonna call it quits for this video. I'll keep streaming for a few minutes. If you're here live, don't go anywhere. But for those of you from the recorded YouTube episode, as always, let me know what you think down in the comments. It's been a blast, and I'll see you in the next Factorio series, which I'm not sure exactly when or what that's gonna be, so keep your eyes peeled. All right, save. Next military tab. What do you guys think? Did we win? Did it all. But yeah, I also have this. If any of you are wanting to do all of it in one go, I have the all tabs option. Oh my gosh, that's so many things. I do think it's a really big boon, I think is a good word. It's a really big boon to modders how much more art is in the base game. Because modders already did a lot of awesome things, even with what felt like a pretty small pool of assets in terms of art and sound. And, you know, they use things like tinting and size differences and stuff like that to really take it to the next level. And I feel like now we have like 4 times as much to do in terms of icons and buildings and new sprites. And so I love that there's so much more for modders to use who don't have art skills or don't want to pay an artist or something, because most modders are doing it for free in their spare time. They're not going to pay money to someone else to make the art, you know. So in most cases, just having tons of stock assets alone is like a huge positive. So I love that about Space Age. Oh, Monotoast, you looked into it. It looks like it could be fixed with a mod using the character running speed modifier and check every tick. Ooh, anything that checks every tick is immediately putting off warning alarms in my head that it might be really bad for performance. But yeah, Senior, I'm glad you enjoyed my takes on things. Didn't agree on everything, but that's the point. Exactly. That is half the fun. I've already received some comments though on the other video, the live version and the YouTube ones that have now started coming out, that have made it painfully obvious that there have been some people who have skipped to the end of the video to see my rankings of everything, and then they fought with me on the comments on the rankings, and what they're like arguing points where I'm like, yeah, you clearly didn't watch the video because I talked about that exact thing. Like you would know why that's there if you would actually watch the video. So that's kind of funny. You know, classic YouTube. Yeah, it's like people, you know, reacting to the headline of the article rather than reading the article. To be fair, I probably do that too. It's hard not to, but it is kind of funny. All right, so assuming, well, no, I shall rephrase. I will be streaming tomorrow at 2 p.m. when Path of Exile 2 releases. It might not be a long stream. If there's tons of technical difficulties and we can't play the game, you know, I might have to call it quits and we'll wait until I can get into the game, because I'm not going to stream for 5 hours watching loading screen. I know some of the big streamers will be doing literally that. They'll just hang out with their community until the game works. But I have some other things to do if I can't actually play the game. But assuming we can play the game, I will be playing the game tomorrow. And we'll play a lot this weekend, and I will be streaming that both here on Twitch and YouTube Live. I think I have decided, for those who are curious, I know I've said a lot, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do the differences between, like, am I streaming to Twitch only, or am I streaming to Twitch and YouTube Live? And then what videos am I making YouTube videos out of that aren't live streamed, that sort of thing. I've settled on, yes, I will stream to Twitch and YouTube Live. Whenever I'm streaming, whatever I'm streaming, unless I have a really big reason to not stream it to YouTube Live, I will stream to both. I actually think I will also start streaming the podcast to YouTube Live. I'm not sure about that yet because I do separately upload that one to Crydax Extra though. So that one I'm still a little bit undecided on. I might do it once just for exposure, but we'll see. Anyway, all that being said, what class am I thinking? Which is Big Pog? What a sentence. Which is Big Pog, IMO? Imagine reading that as someone from the 1980s. Or better, when were the Salem witch trials? I probably shouldn't laugh about that. That was actually a horrific time in history, but anyway, jokes are funny. That being said, I have no idea what class. I tend to gravitate towards wizard type. I laughed because a lot of wizard type classes have a black hole skill, but in this case I don't know if there is like a gravity class. Anyway, that being said, sorceress is kind of an obvious choice for me because of that, but I don't think I'm necessarily going to choose the sorceress because mercenary looks really cool. Monk, for whatever reason, I'm never interested in monks in games. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because like quarterstaves and unarmed feels boring. I don't know what it is, but I've never played a monk. And I don't have a big feeling like I want to play a monk in PoE 2. So I can probably say it's not going to be a monk. I'd be surprised if I made a monk. I don't know what I'm going to make. I'm going to start up the game and I'm going to click around and discover it there, but probably not going to be a monk. Probably not going to be a warrior. I will probably make a warrior at some point, but that feels a bit boring to start with. At the same time, I actually think they've done a really good job making the warrior not boring. Like that can be a thing that ARPGs tend to struggle with. It's like, oh, the barbarian is dumb and has a hammer and that's all he does. I think it looks like all the classes are going to be actually quite interesting to play. But just from like a feeling, a vibe sense, warriors tend to feel more boring to me. So it will probably be not warrior, not monk. I could see a witch, I could see a mercenary, I could see a sorceress, and I could see a ranger. I tend to like bow and arrow stuff in games. I never liked the Amazon in Diablo 2, but I think that's more a product of I didn't like the skills that the Amazon had more than I don't like the bow and arrow type class. I do actually like bow and arrow classes sometimes. So I could certainly go in any or either of those directions. And yes, Senior, I am a noob to PoE. I've never played it. It's not literally true. I've like downloaded it twice and installed it and played less than 2 hours and then not actually gotten into it. So I've never really played Path of Exile. So I am also going in blind. I'm not going to be looking up a ton of guides. I'm not going to be trying to optimize everything. I'm just going to play the game and have fun, and I'm very excited for it. Ranger is a boring class. That is an interesting take. Have you played Path of Exile 2? Do you know that that's true? Or are you saying that's true of Path of Exile 1? Was there a Ranger class in PoE 1? I presume it's going to feel completely different. Because you know, if there is a class that everybody thinks is boring, you know that they were making PoE 2 thinking, how do we make it so the Ranger doesn't feel boring? Like they're good enough developers to ask that question. Of that, I am confident. I've watched enough like interviews with Jonathan and stuff that I do know that they've asked that question. And so I'm confident that they have put effort into making every class feel really good. I almost wonder if it's a preference thing, if the play style of Ranger is something that a lot of people tend to find less interesting, and it's actually really interesting for the people who like it. It just happens to be less people find it interesting. This is all hearsay. I have no idea. Maybe Ranger's gonna suck, and I'm gonna hate it too, and everyone's gonna hate it, but I am interested, like, why? Why is a Ranger a boring class? From your take. Is it that the skills are too easy to use? Is it that they feel too repetitive? The class that most exemplifies the Factorio engineer. Now there's a question. Which class most exemplifies the Factorio engineer? Probably the mercenary, because they use ammo in their weapons, and ammunition kind of feels like something you need to automate and keep supplied. It's just spam skill and everything dies. Isn't that literally every class in every ARPG though? Like, how is the ranger different than other classes? Because that's kind of what an ARPG is. Is it that they only have one skill that's overpowered rather than requiring them to use multiple skills, and other classes require you to use multiple skills? Is it that they're too easy to stay alive and you never feel like you're threatened? You know, like, what's the actual? Yeah, and on that note, I would say PoE 2 seems like they've put in some effort to making the gameplay feel a bit different. I've seen a lot of people say it looks slower, which is such a, like, what does that even mean type sentence, but a lot of people seem to say that, so I think that means something. Okay, 90% of rangers used tornado shot and nothing else. Yeah, I would agree that if the meta of a certain class is to just use a single skill and spam it, that does seem a bit boring. I also do believe that they are going to balance things away from that being the meta for any class. At least it seems like that's their goal. Will they succeed? Who knows, but it does seem like they're going to try to make it not that boring for any class. All right, I should probably head out. I am very excited about Path of Exile 2 tomorrow, though. Witch and Ranger are the only two that were in PoE 1. Ah, okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't even know what PoE 1 has in it. All right, well, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I will see you all, well, some of you tomorrow. See you later, Toast. See you later, Senor. Adios, Carrot.